We have traveled all over the globe to see how 20 famous regional cheeses are made. From mozzarella to Stilton, Emmentaler to Brie. Sit back and enjoy as we meet the artisans, learn the processes, and eat some of the best cheeses in the world. Our first stop is the Netherlands to see how Gouda is made. Every year, 650 million kilos of Gouda cheese are produced in the Netherlands. Most of it is produced industrially, using pasteurized milk. But there are some exceptions. We're here to visit one of the few farms that is still producing traditional raw milk Gouda cheese.
We make a real farming cheese on this farm, and we are specialized in aged cheese. And the taste will really be special when it's aged.
This place is actually quite remote. We're like immersed in nature and we're actually on an island. We had to take a small boat and cross a canal in order to get here. Do I go back? We're in the right direction, maybe? Not very coordinated, no? How do you row? And the woman that is producing the cheese is actually doing it in her own house, which is this one behind me. Depending on whether you're a native, you will pronounce it either Gouda or Gouda. So since we're talking about authentic Dutch cheese, we're going to call it Gouda. The cheese takes its name from the city of Gouda in South Holland. But unlike with other cheeses that are named after cities, there was never any cheese making in Gouda. In the Middle Ages, Gouda acquired sole cheese market rights, basically becoming the only city in the country where farmers could trade their cheese. Gouda was associated so much with the cheese sold there that it was eventually named after the city. The Gouda cheese market was started in 1395. Today, it is one of the most popular attractions in the Netherlands. There are only 280 farmers across the country still making raw milk boerenkaas, or farmer's cheese. And there are only 2 farms that take their cheese to the next level, making Boerengasse Opperklaas, or aged artisanal Gouda, a special type of raw milk farmhouse cheese that must weigh at least 20 kilograms and can be made only in the summer with cattle grazing in the Greenhart region, between the cities of Amsterdam, Rotterdam and Utrecht. Meet Marije van der Poel, who lives on an island in the village of Rijpwetering in South Holland with her husband Hugo and their 3 children, and makes 15 wheels of aged artisanal Gouda every day at the back of their house.
The family van der Poel started here in 1932. So my husband's grandfather, grandmother, they started here, and we still make cheese on the same way, on the authentic way of cheese making. And in 1965, his father and mother, they came here, they married, and they came and started also. And they make cheese. We start living here in 1996. We get married, and my mother-in-law, she learned me how to make cheese. And now, so I do it now for 23 years on my own. We have 150 cows, and we milk them twice a day.
The cheese is made from cold milk from the previous day and warm milk that's fresh.
Every morning I wake up at 10 to 6, and my husband wake up at 4:15. He calls the cows out of the land and they come, and then at 5 o'clock he starts milking them. And in the evening before he also milk the cows, and then when I wake up at 10 to 6, the first thing I do, I make the milk sour. And then at 7 o'clock I have about 3,000, a bit more milk liters, and then I put some rennet to it. And when you put some rennet to it, the milk will get thick in 30 minutes. It's real special every morning. So when I leave the milk rest for 30 minutes, after that short time you can cut it really slowly. And when you cut it, the fresh cheese will go down and the whey will go up. We bring the whey away, we spread it all over our land, and the real fresh cheese. We keep stirring, and slowly we bring it back to the temperature of the cows, up to 37 degrees, not higher, because we make raw milk cheese.
The process of adding warm water to the cheese, called washing the curd, is generally used to make the cheese sweeter. Washing the curd removes lactose, which bacteria could transform into acid. Blocks of curd are then pressed together into wooden molds with the help of linen cloths.
We still use the molds of my husband's grandfather and grandmother. The wooden molds is real special to make cheese. There are only a few cheesemakers in Holland who still use wooden molds. It's because we think the wooden molds is the best to make old aged cheese. Because the wooden molds keep the warmth inside. And that's the best for the taste. So the taste after 2 years is really special. You can still make slices of it after 2 years, and that's real special. There are only 2 farmers in Holland who make this cheese. So that's really, really special.
Each wheel has a unique plaque made from milk protein with information about where and when it was produced. The curds are pressed in the wooden molds for 2 hours on each side. In the evening, they are moved to brines.
It's a natural way to bring salt into the wheels and water slowly, only a few, out of the wheels. And that's different of the factories, because in the factories where they make cheese, they bring salt during the making process. And we do it on an authentic way, in a salty bath. So really slowly.
Cheese wheels stay 5 days in the salty baths, then dry for 24 hours. The Van der Poel family keeps them for a week in their farm, where they are covered by a biological coating.
We put the coating on it 3 times every side, because it's easier to keep them clean. And then every week a trader is collecting about 90 wheels up here, and he keep them in big trader houses, warehouses I think, for a long time. And he aged them, because we are good in making cheese and he's good in aging cheese.
Gouda has to age for at least 28 days. This specialty, the aged artisanal Gouda, ages for at least 2 years, but some wheels can age longer.
And there are no farmers who take the risk to keep the cheese as long as we do in warehouses. So it's really special. This is perfect. It looks perfect. Only a few small holes, so the cheese looked at you like eyes. Only a few, and you see the crystals. All the people think they are salty crystals, but it's protein crystals.
Mariah has cut us a slice of a 3-year-old cheese, and as you can see from the texture, it's actually quite soft, and it's something that I wasn't expecting coming from a cheese that has been aged for 3 years. Like 3 years is such a long time, and I would expect it to be like harder. But here it is. Let's give it a try. It's got like real milky, cheesy taste, like no salt at all, and it's sort of like nutty, caramel-like. Like it reminds me a bit of Parmesan in a way, but in the sense that like it kind of touches the same taste buds, but texture-wise is completely different. Like this one is softer and it melts more in your mouth. It's buttery. Authentic Dutch Gouda is protected by the EU's Protected Geographical Indication under the name Gouda Holland. This certifies that the cheese comes from Holland and has been made traditionally with Dutch milk. Hi guys, this is Claudia and today I'm in Battipaglia in the Campania region in South Italy, where I'm gonna see how they make the world's biggest mozzarella. In this dairy they have made 20-30 kilo mozzarella. That is like way more than the average one. As a southern Italian, my favorite food is definitely mozzarella. Forget pasta, pizza and all those things that are sold all over the world as like typical Italian things. Mozzarella is the real deal. So I'm really curious to see how these massive ones are made. Let's go check it out. Some say that the Campania region is the birthplace of mozzarella. The name even comes from the local dialect mozzare, which means cutting by hand. Mozzarella from this Italian region is made with buffalo milk, and this dairy makes it in a variety of shapes and sizes. Its brightest star? This one, called Zizzona.
La Zizzona di Battipaglia è una mozzarella di bufala, 100% latte di bufala, molto grande. Parliamo di pezzature che vanno da 1 chilo, che partono da 1 chilo e possono arrivare fino a 30-40 kg, e ha la particolarità di avere un capezzolo sulla testa della mozzarella che ricorda un po' il seno materno che caccia il latte. La zizzona prende il nome da una parola del dialetto della nostra terra che vuol dire il seno della madre, che è il seno che caccia il latte.
Caseificio La Fattoria was established in 1988 by the Paraggio family to honor a generation-old tradition started in 1930. Overall, the dairy makes over 9 tons of mozzarella a day, 4,000 of which are zizzonas.
La lavorazione della zizzona è studiata in modo tale che la pasta al suo interno ha una certa solidità, una certa forza, deve essere retinata, cioè deve avere una struttura tale da poter trattenere al suo interno il latte che si utilizza durante la lavorazione, in modo che quando la vai a tagliare il piatto si riempie di latte e quando la vai a mangiare la stessa bocca, lo stesso palato viene inondato dai sapori e dalla fragranza del latte fresco.
And now the main event. It's time to see how a 66-pound zizzona is made. Mozzarella production at the dairy starts early, at about 3 a.m., when milk comes in from the farm. Whey is drained from milk to get these blocks of curd, which in Italian is called cagliata. The curd is cut into smaller pieces and is placed into this machine, which will cook it at about 96 degrees Celsius. That's about 204 degrees Fahrenheit. This stretchy dough that comes out is now ready to be turned into mozzarella. So this is a piece of fresh mozzarella that has just come out of the machine. I'm just gonna give it a bite. Let's go. So good. Like this one hasn't been salted yet, and actually it's very warm. It's not as, you would expect mozzarella to be very warm because it's fresh. Very good, very good. As you can see, the dough is kneaded in a few smaller formats, but we're not interested in those. Yes, that's right, this is what we're all here for. So, the big stuff. When the curd is ready, it takes 2 workers to knead it and transfer it to a pool of salty water. Because of its size, the giant zizzona has to bait in the pool for a bit to make sure that the curd holds together perfectly. So when it's ready to be lifted, it comes out like this. Here you go, 30 kilos. That's a whopping 66 pounds. When a giant Zizzona is born, the team at the dairy will for sure not keep that a secret. They will pose next to it for a photo. I couldn't resist either.
La differenza nella lavorazione c'è perché bisogna lavorare la pasta in modo tale da fargli conservare quella sua caratteristica di cacciare il latte, però contemporaneamente bisogna fare in modo che la pasta sia strutturata meglio, perché chiaramente il prodotto pesa di più, quindi quando lo metti sul piatto, se non è strutturata bene, collassa su se stessa e perde la forma. Quindi più sono grandi le zizzone e più ci vuole un'abilità, una manualità particolare per riuscire a farlo venire bene.
If you're worried about food waste, fear not. These giant-sized mozzarellas are only made bespoke for big events, big dinners, or those sorts of events where everybody comes in hungry for cheese. You might have also noticed that the workers aren't wearing gloves. Here's why.
Tutte le mani dei nostri operai vengono sanificati con dei prodotti che igienizzanti, ovviamente a norma di legge e quindi assolutamente commestibili, e i guanti non vengono utilizzati perché questo lavoro è un lavoro del tutto artigianale. Il lavoro del mastro casaro è come il lavoro del falegname, è come il lavoro dello scultore o del pittore, quindi i guanti ci farebbero perdere quella sensibilità sulle mani, sul tatto, che ci permettono invece di formare le mozzarelle, le trecce, le zizzone nel modo più corretto. Lavoriamo a temperature, la pasta filata viene cotta ad una temperatura di circa 96 gradi, quindi le nostre mani lavorano sempre costantemente a temperature di 80-85 gradi e quindi non c'è nessun rischio di contaminazione.
The giant Zizzona is incredibly popular on social media. The dairy has realized this and made the most of it. Its Instagram is filled with videos of fresh mozzarella. The platform is also used to run contests, competitions, and to sell products directly to customers.
La pubblicità che si utilizza sui social è sicuramente una pubblicità più autentica, più vera, perché si scavalcano tutte le agenzie di marketing, quindi non è quella pubblicità studiata a tavolino, ma una pubblicità che viene fatta con la stessa artigianalità con cui si lavora il prodotto, ovvero noi entriamo con i telefonini nelle sale di lavorazione, riprendiamo i veri dipendenti che stanno lavorando e quindi riusciamo a fare una fotografia o un video di quello che succede realmente all'interno della nostra azienda, e per noi che siamo legati durante il lavoro ad una tradizione e ad una familiarità, questo è molto importante.
So far it's been a beautiful day, the sun is shining and there is a giant mozzarella statue behind me. I've seen a 30-kilo mozzarella come to life. It was absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like this in my life. It took 2 people to lift it, and the moment they cut it open, it released so much milk that I had to just take a step back. What do you think of this 66-pound mozzarella? Would you have one bespoke for your next big dinner or for your birthday? I for sure would prefer this to a birthday cake. Let us know in the comments below.
My name's Ju, and today I'm at the Emmentaler Schaukäserei to show you how traditional Emmentaler cheese is made. Now I'm actually in the village of Affoltern in Emmental, which is in a region just east of Bern. 80% of all Emmentaler production comes from this region, with 150 producers. And its name comes from here. There's the nearby river Emme, and Tal, meaning valley in German. In the US, it's known as Swiss cheese. Emmentaler has iconic holes in it, and it's also the world's largest cheese. Emmentaler AOP can only be produced in these regions in Switzerland. It was granted AOP protection from the EU in 2002, meaning that these areas are the protected designation of origin. But there are a few qualifications for this. The milk has to be from dairy farms no fewer than 20 kilometres away, and it must be produced using raw milk. 17,700 tonnes of Emmentaler are produced each year in this region by 150 family dairies. Cheese production started in this area over 200 years ago. It's a hilly region, so good for cattle grazing. The Emmentaler Schaukäserei show dairy was opened in 1989.
The process of cheese starts at the farmer, so we need a high quality raw milk. Then we heat up the milk on 32 degrees. We put inside the bacteria, the rennet. We have to wait because the rennet make a relationship between the fat and the protein. You are cutting the curds down to a size of 4 up to 6 millimeters. And then you're heating up another time to 53 degrees. You're pumping up to the forms and then you are pressing that for 12 hours.
The cheese is pressed under hydraulic pressure for up to 12 hours. It then spends 8 weeks in the warm fermentation cellar at 22 degrees Celsius. It then goes into a storage cellar for up to 2 months before it's collected by the wholesaler. This makes the famous sweet taste and smooth texture of the cheese. The world famous holes? They're created by a reaction in the bacteria. After 1 month of storage, a strain of bacteria, Propionibacterium shermani, consumes lactic acid and releases carbon dioxide. These bubbles become trapped in the cheese rind and form holes, also known as eyes. But why are the cheeses so large? The size of Emmentaler wheels is heavily regulated, as most have a diameter of 80 to 100 centimetres. They need to be a minimum of 75 kilograms. For cheese produced here, a kilogram costs 19 Swiss francs, or $19. So one wheel could cost over $1,900.
We have to pay taxes also in Switzerland. And 200 years ago, they have the regulation that you have to pay the taxes on a piece and not on kilogram. So they make a big cheese wheel and they have to pay only once the taxes. And still 200 years, we're producing this at minimum 75 kilogram wheels.
The cheese is matured into a 4-month classic, 8-month reserve, 12-month AOP extra, and the 24-month Le Roi d'Emmental.
The taste of the Emmentaler AOP, it's unique. Compared to copies, it's comparing if you take a red wine and a good red wine.
We visited the Schaukäserei restaurant to try the cheese. And we go for the classic, it's 4-month age. What you can see is the springy kind of rubbery texture to it. Let's give this a try. It's so much more flavoursome than other Emmentaler that I've had. It has a really full flavour to it because it's made with raw milk, not pasteurised milk that you might get in the States. It's just a very, very kind of full, rich, milky flavour that is very tasty. But how does this differ to the 12-month aged? It's a lot less kind of springy and bouncy to the touch, but that rich, nutty flavour is really starting to come through. This room downstairs when we went into here in the dairy was the room that, as the minute you walk in, there's this beautiful nutty aroma that hits you, and that is exactly what you can get in the cheese now. It's gone from sort of like a fruity, mild cheese to something which has this texture to it and it's very nutty. To be an authentic Emmentaler cheese, it needs to have the Emmentaler logo and a bespoke cheese number.
On the rind, we put our brand on top before we press the cheese, and this is something like a tea bag. And this is growing directly into the rind. So if you are cutting the cheese wheel into pieces, on each rind you should find a part of this Emmentaler Switzerland logo, and you find also a little number on top. And with this number, our customers can go on our website emmentaler.ch and give this number inside, and Google Maps shows you where this product was produced in which dairy.
And the dairies need to have this protection. Emmentaler is the world's most copied cheese.
So 95% of that what is sold as a Swiss cheese or a cheese with holes called Emmental are fake Emmentaler. So the Emmentaler Switzerland, the brand is protected by the AOP label, and we have also a bacteria inside our cheese. We are the only cheese brand who are using this one, and so we can not only look on the package if it's original Emmentaler AOP, we can also analyze this product. And so these are our activities, and the brand itself, we have people who are working only for searching the origin between the copies, so it's a big work behind here.
We're in Seine-et-Marne in France, in the birthplace of Brie. And actually, we're not far from Paris. We're like 12 kilometers from Disneyland Paris. But here, it's another type of theme park. We are at the Farm de Trentarpin, which is one of the 7 farms making Brie de Meaux. And the only one that makes it fermier, which means from the farm, which means that the cows are milked here and the cheese is just made 100 meters from here. Quelle est la race de la vache?
C'est la race Primolstein, qui est la race laitière par excellence. Voilà, et puis elle parle beaucoup aussi, elle s'exprime.
The farm has 250 cows in total. After milk is collected, it is stored in these vats for 18 hours, and some part of its cream is taken out while some natural ferments are added. These include Penicillium and Geotricum, which make up Brie de Meaux's signature texture and flavor. But more on that later. One day after being collected, milk is moved to another room where it will be split into curds. This is done thanks to the addition of rennet, which takes about 1 hour to solidify the milk.
Le lait est dur là, vous voyez, là, on le voit, il est pris en masse là.
In this other room, it was so hot that our camera steamed up and we had to wait a bit to resume filming.
Il faut attendre un peu. Ah, mais là, oui, c'est compliqué. Ça prend un petit peu de temps.
C'est quelle température ici?
30 degrés là.
30 degrés. Okay.
Alors vous allez voir, le moulage, c'est quelque chose de physique. Il faut 2 heures. Il y a 4 ou 5 personnes qui font le moulage. Au bout de 2 heures, 2 heures à faire ça, vous allez voir, c'est fatigant.
Vous pouvez m'expliquer qu'est-ce que vous êtes en train de faire?
Donc là, je prends mon cahier, je pose tout doucement dans le moule. Et là, je vais tourner, au fur et à mesure, je tourne dans la bassine et je tourne dans le moule. Et je pose mes pelles de cahier tout doucement. Voilà. Je tourne, et là je tourne.
Et quel outil utilisez-vous?
C'est la pelle en inox, la pelle à brie.
Ok. Donc ça c'est spécifique
de Brie.
Oui.
Ça c'est la méthode traditionnelle.
Et donc est-il important de mouler à la main?
Oui, oui, parce qu'il faut déposer. En fait, c'est des pelles assez régulières, pas trop grosses, pas trop fines, et il faut poser assez délicatement. Il ne faut pas jeter le cahier, parce qu'autrement, les morceaux les cubes, après, ça s'écrase. Et c'est pas bon pour le fromage. Ça ne fera pas du bon produit.
Et combien de cahiers mettez-vous dans les bassines ici?
Bah là, on va mettre, là, on a 70 litres de lait. On va partager dans 3 moules.
En bassine, elle fait 3 bries de Meaux.
Chaque jour, on travaille 3 jours de lait. On prépare le lait du lendemain, on moule le lait de la journée et on démoule les fromages de la veille.
Pourquoi est-il important de maintenir le lait cru?
Le fait de chauffer le lait peut amener à détruire quelques particularités du lait, des éléments de goût, des éléments de texture, toutes ces choses-là. Et donc, il est de bon ton de penser que tous les fromages au lait cru sont plus goûteux, plus fermiers, et voilà. Et donc, tous les brie de Meaux sont faits au lait cru.
The mold is made of 3 layers, which are removed gradually as the cheese loses its liquid. From 25 liters of liquid, it's going to get smaller and smaller up until 5 liters. This is going to take 3 hours. And at the end of the whole making process, the weight of the cheese is going to be 3 kilos.
Là, c'est des fromages, ils ont été moulés ce matin, vers 7h moins le quart, on a démarré ce matin. Donc là, il va être 11h moins 20, moins le quart, oui, ça fait 3 heures. Entre 3h et 3h30 pour arriver au moule.
Le premier, ok.
Ouais.
Et il continue à perdre de liquide en fait.
Oui, jusqu'à demain.
On their first day, cheeses in molds are turned 3 times with the help of a steel plate to make sure they hold their shape. They are then piled up on top of each other.
Et donc ici, en fait, on retrouve le même dessin du bois.
Oui.
Il était
c'est
posé.
du jonc.
Oh, ok.
C'est pas du bois, c'est du jonc.
Oh.
On utilise le jonc, c'est une méthode très ancienne. C'est spécifique au brie de Meaux, avec du jonc, donc qui est nettoyé, désinfecté tous les jours, qui est stérilisé tous les jours, on change tous les jours. Et ça permet de bien maintenir le moule avec le crier, avec la plaque en dessous, comme ça glisse pas beaucoup. Ça reste stable. Autrement, on peut mettre des plastiques, mais le problème c'est que ça glisse.
Et aussi, ça vous permet de faire passer un peu de liquide
Oui,
aussi?
ça absorbe, ça va dedans. Là, c'est bien pris, on voit, ça coule.
Oh, wow.
The cheeses stay in the molds for 24 hours to make sure they drain all their liquid. In total, the farm will make about 300 wheels of brie de Meaux, ladled from 100 basins. The day after, the cheeses are removed from molds and salted.
Ça, c'est le brie de Meaux d'hier. Donc celui-là, demain, à la même heure, il sera comme ça.
Oh, wow.
Et là, on a mis du sel dessus. Si vous touchez dessus, on peut sentir le sel. Allez-y, mettez votre doigt là. On peut sentir, il y a du sel dessus un petit peu.
Oh, oui, c'est vrai. I have some salt crystals. Now does it smell like it?
Ils vont passer une journée ici. Et là, il fait environ 18 degrés. On est dans la phase descendante de la température.
Oui, tu peux le sentir.
Oui.
It's much more pleasant.
Alors, le salage va permettre de finir l'égoutage en fait. Et donc, on place les fromages en pente comme ça pour que le sérum s'égoutte le long des grilles et tombe sur le côté pour ne pas que le premier s'égoutte sur le suivant. Sinon, celui du dessous serait complètement trempé. Alors, si on peut en manger, là, ça n'a pas très bon goût.
Il faut attendre.
Voilà, il faut commencer l'affinage. Alors, il passe une journée ici et vous allez voir dans la prochaine salle, c'est l'odeur qui est importante. Voilà. Et là,
Wow, yeah, it smells very differently. It's strong, tangy.
yeah, we can smell nuts and apples. Vous voyez?
It smells like apples.
Cheese wheels are then moved to another room where they stay for 5 to 7 days, within which they're going to be turned 3 times to avoid collapsing. Here they start to get whiter, and it's where we start to see the first effects of the ferments added to the milk at the beginning.
Donc ce fromage-là, il y a combien de semaines?
Voilà, alors celui-ci c'est un fromage qui a 4 semaines aujourd'hui. Pour le brie de Meaux, donc le minimum d'affinage c'est 4 semaines pour prétendre être un brie de Meaux. Chez nous, on prend notre temps. Et donc en général, on est en moyenne d'affinage entre 7 et 8 semaines chez nous.
Ok.
Voilà. Et donc là, on peut voir sur ce fromage, donc le pénicillium, c'est vraiment ce feutrage blanc qu'on peut voir ici, comme ça. Et ici, on a le développement du géotrichum,
Ok.
qui est un autre ferment. Et on voit qu'ils font leur travail, puisque déjà, voilà, le fromage,
Oh,
il s'affine et devient plus crémeux. Voilà.
ok. Et donc il faut les ajouter ensemble, les deux,
Voilà.
les deux ferments, le Geotrichum et Penicillium.
Ils vont travailler chacun leur tour un petit peu, plutôt le pénicillium en premier, et ensuite le géotrichum, et c'est eux qui vont assurer l'affinage du fromage aussi. Here, 8 degrees.
It's cold. It is cold.
This is the last room of the maturation process, and it is another cold one.
Yeah, 8 degrees.
Ici,
Oh,
on est à 6.
6. Oh, I'm dead. It's 6 degrees in this. It's so cold. C'est ça, d'ailleurs, différentes saisons.
C'est vrai.
Ici, c'est l'hiver.
Et alors, ce qui est important pour un fromage, c'est qu'on part haut en température et on diminue tranquillement. En
Ok.
général, on descend par en dessous. Parce qu'après, c'est un frigo et
Oui.
ça n'évolue plus, quoi. Voilà. Et donc là, voilà, nous avons un fromage qui est prêt à la commercialisation, qui est bien
Can I
affiné.
Okay.
Oui, bien sûr.
You can feel the hard crust outside, the rind, and then inside you can feel that it's very, very, very soft. Ça, c'est 7 semaines.
7 semaines d'affinage.
Et combien pèse-t-il?
Voilà, un fromage comme ça, dans le cahier des charges, c'est 3 kg. Entre 2,8 kg et 3 kg.
Et ça, c'est une caractéristique aussi de Brie des Monts, non?
45% de matière grasse également. C'est pour ça, vous vous souvenez, au départ, on enlève une partie de la crème. C'est pour qu'à la fin, il fasse ces 45% de matière grasse.
Ok.
Quand on fait un plateau de fromage, ou quand des gens nous achètent un brie de Meaux, on dit qu'un brie de Meaux est fait pour 50 personnes.
50 personnes.
Voilà.
Ah, je croyais moi. Non.
Vous êtes une grosse consommatrice. Hein.
Oui, moi j'aime le fromage.
Une vache comme ça va donner entre 25 et 30 litres de lait par jour pour faire un brie de Meaux. Puisqu'un brie de Meaux, c'est 25 litres à peu près.
Oh, ok.
Et donc, une vache, un fromage par jour, c'est à peu près la vérité. On essaie de maîtriser la filière de la fourche à la fourchette, comme on dit. Et donc voilà, l'idée c'est de faire le maximum de choses nous-mêmes. Et donc ça, c'est la nourriture qui est produite sur le domaine. Et on peut retrouver des morceaux de maïs, des morceaux de paille, des morceaux d'herbe. Voilà. Et tout ça, c'est un mélange. On a de la luzerne également dedans. Et on a également un peu de betterave. Voilà, ça, c'est des morceaux de betterave. Voilà. Il faut lui mettre un micro peut-être au haut. Il existe une tradition avec le brie de Meaux. C'est qu'il faut toujours couper le brie de Meaux de la pointe vers l'extérieur. On ne coupe jamais la pointe du brie de Meaux. Certains disent que ça porte malheur. À la vôtre.
So creamy. So creamy and buttery.
J'aime ce goût de noisette, un petit peu. On retrouve de noisette ou de beurre.
Today we're in the village of Colston Bassett in Nottinghamshire, England, to learn more about how blue Stilton cheese is made. Today we're going to learn about its history and origin, and I will also be getting my hands dirty in the process. And then, of course, we're going to taste it. This cheese can only be made in 6 dairies, which are spread across 3 counties here in England, which are Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire and Derbyshire. And today we're going to visit Colston Bassett Dairy, which is one of the 6 dairies making Stilton cheese. Stilton cheese takes its name from the village of Stilton in the east of England. The earliest reports of cheese made and sold here date to the 17th century. In 1724, English writer Daniel Defoe referred to the town being famous for cheese, calling the product the English Parmesan. What contributed to its popularity was that Stilton was relatively close to London, only 70 miles away. The town was on the Great North Road. Built by the Romans, this road was the only link between London and Edinburgh before modern motorways took over. The road passed through villages and market towns filled with coaching inns. One of these was the Bell Inn, where a lady named Frances Powlett sold her cheese to travellers, and the word of her Stilton cheese quickly started to travel with them. And though she probably did not invent the cheese herself, she is responsible for expanding its popularity beyond the village.
That was her route to market. It was basically a wayfares for the carriages, so people would stop overnight, and A lot of the cheese was sold there and taken down into London by travellers.
As its popularity grew, Stilton cheese started to be made in the surrounding areas. Today, Stilton production has strict geographical borders and is confined to 3 counties in England. Ironically, as the village of Stilton falls outside of the county's borders, there can't be any cheese made in Stilton called Stilton. Colston Bassett Dairy was founded in 1913 as a cooperative to save excess milk from farms in the village from going to waste. Today, the dairy works with 4 farms that supply 4 million litres of milk a year.
Over the last 100 and something years, they've gone from making 3 months a year, probably making 50, 60 cheese a day, to making 7 days a week. And we are doing, in peak, about 180 cheese a day.
The farms send the milk to the dairy, where it is pasteurized.
What we do is we take the milk, we add a blue mold culture, start a culture to produce acidity, and then we add rennet, which will help us clot the milk and turn it into curd. Once we've set it and it looks like a giant jelly, a giant white jelly, we will cut the curd, release the moisture, and we'll drain that moisture off. Quite specific to us, all of our cheese will be hand ladled from vat to trolley, and that's just a transfer of curd from one large vessel to another. That will give us moisture release without losing too many fatty proteins to whey. Mechanised processes, large-scale business, people who are transferring large volumes can and do lose fatty proteins to whey. We do, but just less because we're doing it by hand.
If you think that ladling is just about transferring the curds from one vat to another, think again. Billy showed me how to do it, and I had a go myself.
So the thing to remember is not to dig, keep it quite flat and just push it through.
That's it?
Very good. Okay, so you also need to,
No?
it needs to all come down to the same depth.
Oh.
So you can't have some dig, some not. So it needs to be exactly the same all the way down. Same here.
So I'm just gonna try one more for the road.
And that bit of cheese is now dead. You can let Craig have it and we'll get on with it.
Thank you. So you know when you say one day I'm going to quit everything and become a cheesemaker? Not an easy task, but you have to think it through.
So once we've ladled, we will then allow it to settle, and again more whey will come out, and then you will drain that whey, and once you start draining the whey, the bacteria that's in the curd will start to multiply and produce quite a high level of lactic acid overnight. And then the next morning we'll come in, and at a specific lactic acid point, we will break the curds by milling, so it's a uniform size. We'll hand salt the curds, hand mix the curds, and form it up into a cheese hoop, as you see behind me.
The cheese is placed in a warm room to allow some of the moisture to evaporate. The cheese is turned every day, and when it's dry enough and can stand on its own, the mold is taken off.
We need to stop the aerobic mold growing at that stage, because if you make it grow too quickly with Stilton, it won't taste right because you're changing the pH too quickly. So we will take a knife and we will actually rub the outside of the cheese, and by rubbing the outside of the cheese we create a barrier so no oxygen can get inside, and we stop the mold growth at that, or the blue mold growth at that particular stage of production.
Then the wheels are turned every day. When they're 5 or 6 weeks old, they are pierced to allow oxygen in, which will activate the blue mold and produce the Stilton's characteristic blue veins. Then the cheese matures for another 5 weeks.
Put it on straight and then turn it all the way around. Right, now gently bring it out.
So this one is almost ready, yeah?
Almost, not quite. I mean, the other end might not be quite so firm because they don't mature in uniform. So what we should see, it'll start the bloom process from the centre and work out. So we can tell, looking at that, it's not ready yet because it's not fully blued. But mind your finger when you're bringing it back out. So So push it to the centre, stop, finger on. Now use your other hand.
Like that?
Finger on, usually your thumb. And have it open the gap and then pull it out gently. And then just clean it so that that's covering the hole.
We've got a slice of freshly cut Stilton, so I'm so excited to give this a try. First thing that I want to point out about this is that it's not that smelly. You know how blue cheeses have this reputation for being so smelly. It's actually all right. Oh, it's so good. It just disappeared. It just melted like that. The texture is nice and crumbly. Even if this is some sort of hard cheese, so it's not that creamy, it actually is on your palate. It has some like sweet hints at the beginning when you first taste it, and then you're left with a bit of salty aftertaste, which is incredible. I mean, you know, you get two different flavors in one bite. It's so good. I'm gonna have another one. The sweetness of the blue veins, so good. And also if you get a mini piece without the blue, that in itself, it's marvelous. And again, the texture is incredible, so crumbly. And it's something that I haven't had with other blue cheeses. They are kind of gummy. This one is so nice, melts in your mouth, incredible.
Stilton is a registered trademark by the Stilton Cheesemakers Association, which was founded in 1936. The trademark protects the cheese in countries including the US, Canada, and Japan. Within the EU, the cheese was also granted the protected designation of origin in 1996.
Cheese curds. Can you name a more quintessential food in Wisconsin? Wisconsin cheese curds have a signature orange color. They have a unique flavor that can vary depending on the batch. And most importantly, when you bite into them, they must squeak, which tells you the curd is a good one. We're here in Door County, and we're about to meet Chris Rennard, a third-generation artisanal cheesemaker who's been making cheese his entire life. They're going to show us how milk turns into the savory, squeaky snack. The process itself takes 4 hours. It starts with cheesemakers releasing 20,000 pounds of pasteurized whole milk into a large open vat.
All the milk that comes in today, we'll make in the cheese tomorrow. For every 10 pounds of milk, you get about 1 pound of cheese on average.
Luckily, Wisconsin is the perfect place to get all this milk locally. The state has about 1.3 million cows, and with that much dairy available, they take cheese production seriously. It's the only state in the United States that requires a special license to sell any cheese of any kind, including curds. Chris gets his milk from 24 family farms in the area that work together with the dairy plant as a cheese-making ecosystem.
Depending on the milk that comes in that day, the temperature outside, what the cows have eaten at the time of the year, every vat of cheese will have a slightly different flavor.
All that pasteurized milk gets mixed with just a little annatto seed coloring to give it that orange hue. Wisconsinites prefer their curds orange, while cheesemakers on the East Coast stick to white cheddar. For a vat that holds 20,000 pounds of milk, Rennard's adds only 29 ounces of coloring.
The seed comes from either South Africa or South America. It does not affect the flavor.
What does affect the flavor is the rennet. Unlike cheesemakers in Europe, Chris doesn't use animal rennet to make his cheese curds, which together with the starter cultures breaks down the milk into cheese.
The rennet we use is a microbial rennet. We found it works the best with the cheese. That rennet does a really nice job of setting it up, and the enzymes of the rennet help with the aging process.
And so we see over here, just observing in the room, it's getting really steamy.
We cook everything with a vats with steam, so no matter what time of the year it is, it's always warm in the cheese factory. Cooking it for a couple reasons. One, it's going to help firm that cheese up. It takes some of the moisture out, but it also, you want the starter to be at the optimal temperature. So
what temperature range do you want to be in for this?
We're going to cook this to 100 degrees.
Okay. What happens when the cheese mixture gets to 100 degrees?
We will shut off the steam so it doesn't get any hotter. But what we'll also do is then we keep agitating. The reason is we want to firm this curd up.
we want the nice squeaky cheese curd you're gonna get. If your starter cultures don't get to the right temperature, you'll have an off flavor. So once the cheese firms up, the milk coagulates and it gets nice and firm, then we'll take wire knives and we run that through. And that is cutting it into curds and whey.
Those wire knives are called cheese harps, and they've been around since the 1960s. Once the cheese is cut, it takes about 2.5 hours until you see actual curds start to form. Cheesemakers here aim for a nice, even cut. The more even the cut, the more the whey is expelled and the cheese sticks together.
We're stirring it right now to keep it from clumping. One of the reasons we do what we do hands-on is we can watch and control all that. We don't have to worry about a malfunction of equipment. We're literally doing it. What we're doing right now is checking to make sure the cheese curds are firm. We want the right firmness to move on to the next process. If you leave it too soft, the proteins, calcium, some of that's going to expel out in your whey.
As soon as cheesemakers like Chris approve the texture and pH level, whey is removed from the vat and pumped into a cream separator. The cream is sold to Pine River Dairy to make butter, while the whey is sold off to make whey proteins. Once a majority of the whey is drained, cheesemakers draw the curd to the sides of the vat and let the whey continue to drain down the center. This process is called ditching.
We're pushing the cheese to the sides and we're firming it, pushing it together so it's one solid piece.
Am I doing this right?
You're doing it good. You just push right there, you go.
Like that?
Yep.
Or too much?
Yeah, you're okay.
And then one more?
Yep. Push it just so it firms up. There you go.
Oh, so you don't have to push that hard.
Big mass of cheese
Okay.
is going to get trimmed into slabs. And those slabs will be about 20 pounds.
Okay. And so what are you doing now? You're cutting the...
We're going to level it off,
Okay.
and then we're going to break up all this cheese on top so it all gets matted into one
Oh,
slab.
I see. What do we do? I just do this?
You can break it up,
Oh
yep.
my god! So we're breaking it up so that it can layer on top.
So it's going to knit all back in together as we roll it over and stack it up.
Ugh. This is a good hand massage.
Right now, this moisture you're feeling in here
Yeah.
is probably in the 43 to 45 range. So it's a higher moisture percentage. We don't
Hold
want
it
it too firm
together?
too hard.
And why?
Because you want to keep that squeak, that moisture in it,
Okay.
the rubbery texture.
Hopefully I'm helping.
You are.
And what are you doing now? So you're
What
shoving...
we're doing is we're going to take all the fines, the smaller curds,
Yeah?
and we want to mill it in so we get as much of our yield as possible.
So
Pick
grab
up the
it.
front,
Ugh.
slide your hand down the cut side.
This way?
Yep.
And?
turn it right over. And then you gotta slide it nice and tight. We want to mat and knit all this cheese together in one solid slab.
Oh, gravity will
Push
mold
it
it,
together.
basically.
Mold it together, yep. Now we're gonna flip it one more time and then we're gonna cut it and stack it.
Like, okay.
I'll let you get the first one and I'll get the rest.
Ugh. Okay.
Afterward, Chris checks the acidity level of the cheese, and if it is in the correct range, they will begin to mill it up into cheese curds.
And what if it doesn't hit your desired pH level?
We'll leave it sit. That's one of the things about being a small artisan plant. We can leave the cheese sit if it's not where we want it. We don't have to force it through.
The cheese is washed with warm water to expel any extra whey, then salted 3 times. This is done to seal in and enhance the flavor and also control the pH of the cheese.
We're breaking up all the clumps just so we get the salt to distribute evenly. The salt's absorbing into all the small pores in the piece of cheese.
So, is this the final product?
This would be cheese curds.
What's the difference between a cheddar curd flavor and a plain curd flavor?
One of the differences you'll notice, like a young cheddar compared to a young Colby, in the first 7 to 10 days, you're not going to taste much difference at all in flavor. But after that 10 to 14 day range, when the cultures start really getting a foothold in the cheese, the flavors will start to differ vastly. My cheesemakers probably try 1 curd out of every batch they make.
Oh my god, can we try?
Yes, we
Are
can.
we allowed to? Wow. I love the texture of your cheese curd.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
In total, a plant like Renard's can sell about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds of cheese curds a day. Some of the curds are sent to be breaded at restaurants to fry, while others are packaged and sold fresh at stores. Chris wouldn't let me return to Chicago without trying Renard's myriad of curd flavors. So we're going to try the different flavors of cheese curds that Renard's has for us. All of these cheese curds are their cheddar cheese curds, but they have different seasonings on top. All right, let's give it a go. Can you hear the squeaking? I don't know if you're gonna hear it. This is so squeaky. It feels so fresh. And it has a little hint of ranch. As you can tell, it's the ranch flavor. It's a little bit moist, but it's also in between a soft mozzarella and a hard aged cheddar. It's basically smack dab in the middle where you get the softness of it, but it's also, it has a little bit of a bite, not too much. But it's super tasty. And you can tell that this was salted, and then the seasoning on top is really what I prefer. I could pop these in like popcorn. I have to come back to Door County to try out these curds.
Hi guys, this is Claudia, and today I'm gonna take you to see how Gorgonzola cheese is made in Italy. I'm in Trecate in the Piedmont region, which is one of the only 2 Italian regions together with Lombardy where this cheese can be made. And this is one of the only 29 dairies in the world that can produce this cheese.
The Gorgonzola industry is worth over $800 million. Almost 5 million wheels are produced each year, and production is confined to this small area only. Gorgonzola cheese has a centuries-old history, and it is still done using the same ingredients and techniques that it was decades ago. Even machines like this one, used to stir the curd, are designed to recreate human movements as gently as possible. Its beautiful marbled interior is given by Penicillium roqueforti, a fungus that is used to ripen the cheese. And this is why, in fact, blue cheese is called so.
Innanzitutto il gorgonzola è un formaggio che è nato in Valsassina, quindi è un formaggio che nasce sulle Alpi. Le famiglie di bergamini, cioè che erano quelli come i pastori e fanno con le pecore, i bergamini lo facevano con le vacche, quindi portavano le vacche al pascolo sostanzialmente. La mia famiglia è una famiglia bergamina ed è da queste famiglie che hanno iniziato a trasformare quel latte che raccoglievano in formaggi. Nel nostro caso hanno fatto formaggio arborinato, quindi in che modo? Facendolo sostanzialmente dopo aver fatto il formaggio veniva lasciato stagionare in queste che anticamente erano degli incavi naturali, quindi delle grotte naturali. Poi sono state delle casere, che erano delle costruzioni proprio particolari che andavano sottoterra in Valsassina. Poi successivamente tutti i produttori, i maggiori produttori di gorgonzola, per diciamo necessità economica del tempo, perché comunque le stalle nella pianura padana si erano sviluppate, quindi il commercio era aumentato, si sono spostati in pianura padana.
Gorgonzola cheese is made with unskimmed, pasteurized cow's milk, and it can either be mild and creamy or hard and pungent, depending on how long it is left to age. The 2 kinds are easily distinguishable by the color of their veins, blue in the creamy and green in the pungent.
Il gorgonzola e quindi anche i formaggi blu sono, per noi sono un formaggio molto particolare, trasversale, perché non è né un formaggio molle né un formaggio stagionato, cioè è tutte e 2 le cose. In più c'è la variante della muffa blu, del Penicillium roqueforti, che è un altro, diciamo, apportatore di sapore e di differenze, quindi è un formaggio che ha molte strutture, oltre che visive, cioè anche visivamente è molto bello.
Penicillium roqueforti, the fungus, is added to milk at the very beginning of the production process, in a big cauldron together with enzymes, rennet and yeast. In about 20 minutes, milk becomes curd and can be transferred into molds. Each wheel is marked with the dairy's identification number. You can see number 60 here. That's Caseificio C. Invernizzi we visited. Here, between 450 and 500 Gorgonzola wheels are made every day. To help the curd settle, wheels are turned 4 times and then left to rest overnight. Then they are salted a couple of times. At this stage, they weigh about 18 kilos, that's 40 pounds, but this number will drop to 12 kilos, 26 pounds, at the end of the aging process as excess whey is released. The salting rooms are warm and humid. This is also to favor the activity of yeasts inside the cheese. Mild Gorgonzola wheels stay for 3 days and hard Gorgonzola for 5. Then they are moved again into a cold room, where they are punctured 100 times on each side. This is to allow oxygen into the cheese for it to grow its signature blue veins. All Gorgonzolas at Caseificio C. Invernizzi are punctured with a machine, but some other in-house cheeses are still punctured by hand. After this step, the cheese is left to age. It takes 2 months for the blue, creamy Gorgonzola and 3 months for the green, pungent one. The color difference is pretty evident. But do they really taste different? The dairy set up a little cheese tasting so that we could try them both.
That's amazing, my God. It almost doesn't feel like, you bite it into cheese. It just melts in your mouth. Oh wow. They're so different, it's crazy, I mean, you can tell from the texture that this is harder and this is creamier, but this is much, much stronger. It has a stronger bite.
After trying Gorgonzola on its own, in-house chef Giampiero Cravero wanted to show me how versatile the cheese is, so he cooked some squid ink spaghetti with both cheeses.
Io basta.
Wow, cheese taste is very strong, but I think the combination with the squid ink is great. I mean, color-wise, of course, it's amazing because black and white, they're like opposite, right? So you can really see the cheese in there and it's sort of creamy texture on the pasta.
Gorgonzola cheese is protected by the European Union by the Protected Designation of Origin scheme. This means that any cheese labeled Gorgonzola must meet a particular set of standards and is subject to quality checks. It's also wrapped in a signature aluminium foil.
Devi essere un caseificio che nasce in questo territorio, cioè tra, genericamente tra Novara e Bergamo. Questo è il territorio consentito, quindi deve essere un caseificio che nasce, che sta in quel territorio, che raccoglie il latte da quel territorio. Infatti noi lo raccogliamo, il nostro latte viene da Magenta, che qui ha 7 km. Tutte le stalle da cui raccogli il latte devono essere certificate per la produzione di Gorgonzola. Devi rispettare tutti gli standard che richiede il consorzio. Avrai un numero di casello che tu dovrai imprimere sulle tue forme nel caseificio appena sono state prodotte e oltre a rispettare i giorni di stagionatura, ad esempio, avrai anche da mettere sulla forma finale, quando sarà stata stagionata completamente, l'alluminio goffrato. Questo è il modo in cui puoi essere tutelato e un produttore deve seguire per fare il Gorgonzola DOP, che nella maggior parte dei casi sono comunque delle famiglie storiche che l'hanno sempre prodotto e quindi si sono originate in questi territori.
Manchego cheese is made in a part of Spain that is called La Mancha, which is just south of Madrid. And today we're in Campo de Montiel, which is a region in La Mancha. We're going to visit La Granja, which is a farm here that's been doing the cheese for over 200 years.
We're going to learn about its history and making process, and find out why it is Spain's most popular cheese, as well as what makes it different from other cheeses in the world that bear the same name. Evidence of cheese making in La Mancha region dates to the Bronze Age. But cheese is not the only thing this region is known for. In the 17th century, novelist Miguel de Cervantes brought the region to fame, narrating the adventures of knight-errant Don Quixote de la Mancha, which is the second most translated book in the world after the Bible. Within the region, Manchego cheese is made in the provinces of Toledo, Cuenca, Ciudad Real and Albacete.
El queso manchego está muy vinculado a La Mancha. Desde que se tiene memoria se lleva elaborando queso en esta zona porque es una zona eminentemente ganadera. Siempre ha habido pastoreo y los pastores siempre han utilizado la leche de esas ovejas para hacer queso. Entonces el queso y La Mancha es una historia que ha ido unida desde que se tiene conocimiento.
Finca La Granja is a fifth-generation family farm that's been making the cheese since the 19th century.
Finca La Granja sabemos que se lleva haciendo queso desde 1830, o sea que son casi 200 años de historia en la elaboración del queso manchego. Hacemos queso todos los días, elaboramos únicamente el queso con la leche de nuestras propias ovejas que pastan en los campos de alrededor y con esa leche fresca elaboramos el queso cuando la leche no tiene aún ni 24 horas de vida. Y es un factor muy importante para nosotros porque al ser queso elaborado con leche cruda, pues transmitimos todos esos beneficios y esa seña de identidad que nos da nuestra ganadería.
The dairy makes about 65 wheels of Manchego cheese per day. The cheese is made with milk from the previous evening and morning milk that's fresh.
El proceso comienza con el filtrado de la leche, la colocamos en la cuba y el maestro quesero va jugando con el tiempo y la temperatura para cuajar esa leche. En el momento preciso le añade el cuajo y deja que cuaje hasta que él considera el punto óptimo de corte de la cuajada. Esa cuajada se corta muy sutilmente, muy despacito para que el maestro quesero consiga el momento perfecto y el grano, el tamaño y la textura perfecta en esa cuajada. Después se deposita en la mesa y se va introduciendo a mano en los moldes. Eso es muy importante porque al final es la mano del quesero la que determina cómo va a ser el queso. Se va metiendo a mano uno por uno formando cada pieza.
The mold is very important because it is what actually gives the cheese its signature pattern. It's all printed inside, and then after being placed into molds, the cheese is placed into a press. And it's pressed for about 4 hours, and after these 4 hours it's going to be moved to brines.
Each wheel is labeled with a unique plaque of milk protein. In the past, Manchego cheese used to be shaped in these baskets, made of esparto grass.
Esta era la forma tradicional que tenían los pastores de hacer el queso. Esto se llama flor y está diseñada para permitir que el suero salga con el hierro de la finca, y esto se llama pleita, que está hecha con esparto trenzado. Yo recuerdo a mi abuelo elaborando queso con estas pleitas, y lo que solían hacer era poner la flor, la pleita encima, aquí ponían un paño de algodón y ese paño de algodón lo llenaban con la cuajada del queso. Luego ponían otra flor encima y la ponían en las prensas, en los entremisos.
After the wheels are taken out of the brines, they are placed in a drying room.
As you can see behind me, we have different blocks of cheese. We have just here on my right, the ones that were made just yesterday, and then going forward we have 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, up until 1 month.
El moho es muy especial para nosotros, es una contaminación ambiental, es completamente natural, pero lo que hace es proteger el queso. Cuando el queso ya está cubierto de moho como este, el frío y de las cámaras incide de una forma mucho más lenta. El moho ayuda a que el queso guarde humedad y sobre todo da muchísimo aroma. A mí me encanta, por ejemplo, lanzar las esporas al aire. Al final, lo que hacemos con el volteo de diario del queso es estas esporas, ¿no? Este moho lo lanzamos al aire y esas esporas van colonizando los diferentes quesos y van creciendo y se van reproduciendo. Pero bueno, al final creemos que merece la pena tener un producto tan natural como este.
Manchego cheese matures for at least 2 months. Cheese that matures from 2 to 6 months is called semicurado, and it becomes curado when the maturation exceeds 6 months.
Y lo que hacemos luego es, cuando el queso tiene 2 meses, limpiamos ese moho y damos una capa de aceite de oliva virgen en la corteza. De esa forma conseguimos nutrir la corteza del queso. El queso la corteza va a estar un poquito más suave. Frenamos un poquito que se seque, que se siga secando. Y luego, posteriormente, cuando el moho vuelva a crecer, pues crecen otras cepas con otra incidencia de moho que ya dejarán listos para ser cepillado otra vez y listos para poner a la venta.
So next to me is a 5-month-old Manchego cheese. This one is semi-hard, semi-curado, they say in Spanish. And we got some slices that Gabriela's got for us. Smells very nice. Throughout my cheese journey, I learned to become a fan of raw milk cheese. So I actually have high expectations for this one. So nice. It's very good. I like it. It's got some like tangy aftertaste. I think that is because it's been aged for more than the two months that is the minimum. It's very good. You taste the raw milk. You can taste that this comes from sheep's milk and it's not cow's milk. It has a different texture as well in your mouth, and I like it. It's somewhere in between crumbly and a bit buttery, so you get both of them depending on, you know, when you actually bite into it and when you chew it. Again, the fact that this one has matured more than the minimum has made it better.
Despite the fact that the cheese takes its name from the Spanish region where it originated, other Spanish-speaking countries call their cheeses Manchego. So what is the difference? When the Spanish conquistadors landed in Mexico, they brought with them the art of cheesemaking, Manchego cheese included. Today, Mexican Manchego shares very little with its Spanish namesake, as it is made with cow's milk and is usually matured for a shorter time. But Spanish cheesemakers are not happy to share their cheese's name with others. Within the EU, Spanish Manchego cheese is protected by the Protected Designation of Origin status, which prevents cheeses not from La Mancha from being called Manchego. In April 2018, a new trade deal with Mexico granted the EU exclusive rights for 340 products with a geographical indication, but excluded Spanish Manchego. So at this stage, the two cheeses coexist, and the row is sure to be continued.
A wheel of Parmesan cheese can cost over $1,000. The average wheel weighs 88 pounds, which means it costs over $11 per pound. That might not sound like a lot, but it's more than double the price of your average cheddar. A wheel of Parmesan cheese takes at least 1 year to age, 131 gallons of milk to make, and it can only be made in a small area in northern Italy. Parmesan cheese is a big business for Italy. An average of 3.6 million wheels are produced each year, and the industry is worth an eye-popping 2.2 billion euros, that's about 2.5 billion US dollars, making this cheese one of Italy's biggest exports. Every single cheese wheel is made in a restricted area in northern Italy, in the region of Emilia-Romagna. Its Italian name, in fact, Parmigiano Reggiano, means from the cities of Parma and Reggio Emilia. So how does this turn into this? And what makes it so special? We went to a dairy in Parma, Italy, to find out. The very first producers of Parmesan cheese were monks over 1,000 years ago. Then, like now, Parmesan wheels were made with only 3 ingredients: cow milk, salt, and rennet. There are only 329 dairies in the whole world that are certified to produce Parmesan cheese, and they are all based in the same area where the monks used to make it. In fact, it isn't even possible to make the exact same product outside of the production area. And why is that? Turns out, it's all about 3 good bacteria that only grow in this specific territory.
Tutta la logica nella filiera di produzione del Parmigiano Reggiano è trasferire questi batteri dall'erba alla forma di conservazione dell'erba, il fieno, dal fieno alla mangiatoia, dalla mangiatoia attraverso le tecniche di allevamento degli animali al latte, e una volta che sono nel latte, nel casificio, si cerca di farli crescere per permettere la loro presenza dentro la forma del Parmigiano Reggiano. Se loro ci sono, fermentano le componenti del latte negli aromi, profumi e sapori tipici del Parmigiano.
It takes 131 gallons of milk to make 1 wheel of Parmesan cheese. That's whole low milk. Dairies combine freshly milked whole milk with day-old skim milk to make the cheese. The 2 milks are transferred in these copper vats along with fermented whey, a sort of sourdough, and then rennet, an enzyme which gives the milk a yogurt-like texture. The cheese master will then split the milk into curds using this tool called spino.
Il casaro deve trasformare questa consistenza in una consistenza più gommosa, perché dobbiamo togliere acqua, visto che dobbiamo fare un formaggio a lunga stagionatura. E inizia quindi la fase della cottura e in 5 minuti si passa dalla temperatura di 38 gradi centigradi a 55 gradi centigradi.
Together with changing the cheese texture, cooking the milk does another essential job. Do you remember the 3 good bacteria? Well, they're not alone. Other bacteria, bad bacteria, might have joined the party. Cooking the milk ensures that only the good bacteria can continue the journey, while the others are kicked out. When cooked, the curd travels all the way to the bottom of the vat, where it's left to settle. 45 minutes later, here it is, a compact mass of curd, weighing 220 pounds. This mass is the equivalent of 2 cheese wheels and is split carefully by workers with linen clothes. Each half is then transferred into molds.
Ogni 2 ore questo telo viene cambiato e l'operazione è: si toglie il peso sopra questa massa, si cambia il telo, si gira la forma. Questo ogni 2 ore fino alla sera, alle ore 20.
At 8 p.m., the cheese is covered with this stencil, which will engrave the logo Parmigiano Reggiano.
These dots are the mark of origin used to tell customers that this is the real thing, made in the same restricted area where monks used to live in the Middle Ages. Each wheel is also given an ID. It's this plaque, made from milk protein, which contains information about where it was produced and when. The stencil is removed 4 days later, and the wheels are pressed into brines, where they stay completely plunged for about 19 days. This process helps to form the cheese rind, which acts as a barrier for the cheese. And this is when the maturation process begins. Wheels remain relatively untouched for 1 year. After that, a master grader will inspect them and brand them. The average maturation is 2 years, but some wheels are aged as long as 10 years to achieve a stronger, nuttier taste. A longer maturation period makes the price go higher. That's why a Stravecchio, very old Parmesan, that has matured for 3 years will be sold on the market for an average of 13 euros. That's about $15 per pound. This high price means that there is now a black market of counterfeit Parmesan products. Italy has been struggling with fake products for years. In fact, the problem is so big that the fakes have become an industry of their own that is estimated to be worth 100 billion euros, that's about 113 billion US dollars, with Parmigiano Reggiano being one of the biggest brands fighting copycats. While the cheese is protected in the European Union under the Protected Designation of Origin scheme, it is still struggling to get the recognition it deserves in the rest of the world.
Fuori l'Unione Europea e fuori quei paesi che non fanno parte di accordi bilaterali dove quindi viene riconosciuta la normativa europea, il problema è veramente molto grande, il problema è veramente molto serio. Infatti, al di là di poter proteggere il termine Parmigiano Reggiano attraverso un'operazione di deposito del marchio, in tanti paesi, in quasi tutti i paesi del mondo, il termine Parmigiano Reggiano è un trademark, però è possibile utilizzare in tanti paesi del mondo il termine Parmesan, quindi mettendo in confusione il consumatore finale che pensa di acquistare il vero Parmigiano Reggiano acquistando un Parmesan. Lì il problema è veramente molto grande e si sta lavorando a livello governativo.
So, how do you recognize a real Parmesan cheese? Do you remember this dotted stencil? That's a solid indication that the cheese is legit. If that's not visible, the packaging should contain Parmigiano Reggiano's official logo and the EU's Protected Designation of Origin.
The defining qualities of Cornish York cheese are a dark green rind and a candid white mold. The rind actually comes from these leaves, called stinging nettles, which are brushed on by hand, one by one. The nettles give the cheese a fresh, creamy taste with hints of herbs, seaweed and lemon. Cornish York may not be as popular as other English cheeses like Stilton or traditional cheddar, but it's just as rare because it can only be made in one place. We're in the hedgerows of Ponsonby, Cornwall, and these right here are the nettle leaves that are used to wrap Cornish York. Imagine there are only 5 people in the whole world that know how to properly wrap a Cornish York. So how did this recipe even come about? Well, it was actually found randomly in a book about 400 years ago. Fascinating, isn't it? Well, I'm certainly intrigued. So it's time for us to go and find out more. There's only one dairy in the world that makes this cheese, Liner Dairies in the heart of Cornwall. Like all cheeses, it all starts here, with fresh milk, rennet, and in this case, cultures. You see these beautiful white molds around the cheese? That's what the cultures will trigger in the aging process later on.
You need to disperse the whey bit by bit gently. If you take the whey off too quickly, you won't leave enough behind for the cultures to feed on. The sugar is in the whey, your cheese will be very metallic, very cheddary, which you don't want.
Leighton will test the whey up to 20 times per vat between each step. He does it to monitor its temperature and those levels of lactic acid, which will give us a crumbly cheese. For a few hours, the day goes like this: cutting, testing, cutting, testing.
They're big, the curd itself is still quite delicate, and you can see underneath the pat, you can see the curds, the individual curds.
Yes, yeah, but they still stick together, even though...
It always wants to knit itself together.
Oh, I see, because they remember where they came from.
Once all the whey is drained, all that is left is salting the curd, cutting it again into very small pieces, placing it into molds, and pressing them. After it spends 24 hours in the press and in brine, we have a beautiful white canvas that is ready to turn into a Cornish yard. The only people fit for the job are these ladies, the nettlers. Every year between May and July, they go out in the fields to carefully pick the stinging nettles that are used to wrap the cheese. This large quantity of nettles is kept frozen to freeze off the small needle-like structures that sting and cause a rash when they touch human skin.
So what we have to ensure is to make sure that this leaf is dipped, completely immersed 5 times.
Oh, 5 times?
Because you're actually washing it. And then with the, as you see, there's a furry side and there's a shiny side.
Yeah.
The shiny side goes against the cheese.
Okay.
So what you're trying to do is make that leaf stick on that cheese. And then with your brush, take your moisture out. And then what you do is you just cover the cheese.
All right, and do you have a specific pattern in mind when
Yes,
you do
we
it?
do.
Oh,
Yeah, we call it dragon's teeth, but you can see it's like up and down. So it's quite therapeutic. It's
That's true.
mesmerising sometimes.
Yeah. So how many years have you been doing this?
This is my 15th.
Wow. So what would this nettles do to the actual cheese?
It gives a lovely earthy flavour. It completely surrounds the cheese, so it's giving it like a protective layer. It's very, very quirky. It's very unusual. No one else does it.
To see if I could create a Cornish yard myself, I gave nettling a go.
Okay, so I pick it up from the
Pick it up, keep it in your left hand.
Yeah.
Spread your fingers out like you're doing, and then submerge that 5 times.
3, 4, 5.
Okay, so then the shiny side, I would then pick it up with 2 hands. That's it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I would put that
The
on
shiny
that
side.
on that corner. That's it.
Like here?
Yep.
All right, well, it's holding its shape. I thought it was just
Yeah,
gonna
no, you're
disintegrate
doing.
in my hand.
No, you're doing very
All
well.
right.
That's it. And then with that, you quite forcefully,
Alright.
you can get the water out. That's it. So you're trying to
Okay.
make that leaf stick to the cheese.
Jenny told me that it's okay to leave little gaps between leaves when nettling. Why? Because the cultures that we added at the very start of the making process will form a natural mold once the cheese ages.
Can you see the pattern you're forming?
Yeah. It's not intentional.
You're doing very well.
How do you call it?
Well, dragon's teeth, I'd call it.
Dragon's
But
teeth? Yeah,
it's
that's-
just like that jagged effect.
This is more like sheep's teeth, to be honest.
Sheep's teeth.
They're not.
A Cornish yard matures for 21 days. It ages in cold maturing rooms with high humidity. The cold temperature preserves the cheese, but also the nettles, which will decompose very easily in a warm environment. The nettles themselves also help the cheese mature, giving it rigidity and firmness and creating a rind.
And the perfect rind is firm, but not soft. It's dry, but not too dry. It's not crispy. It's a little bit moist, and then it's got this lovely environment for these white molds to develop. And so, you know, every cheese looks like a Christmas tree. So,
Yeah, it does.
So you have one nettle meeting another nettle here. The white Candida mold is in the cheese, so at sort of 20 days, it's starting to break through and create this mold that then spreads its way. So this little bit here is where there's a gap in the nettles that the mold can poke through. And then finally, as the cheese matures, as these molds take a hold, that flavour starts permeating down through the cheese.
Catherine's Dairy is the only one in the world that makes this cheese. But the idea that nettle leaves enable cheese to mature is at least 400 years old, from the time when cheese was made at home. Back then, cheeses were placed on beds of nettles to favor the aging.
So we're looking at a little bit of maturing under the rind. You can see that the rind has softened under there, and then you've still got this sort of slightly crumbly core.
I was expecting the rind to be a bit thicker. Yeah.
Well, it's just one thin nettle leaf. It's very, very lactic. It's got a bit of a snap to it as you break it, and then as you get to the rind, it's slightly more elasticy. And
that's
a little
true.
Bit more,
Yeah. That's what.
So
let's see.
So very milky, slightly acid.
Yeah. God, I don't know. I'm just having some childhood memories. It really reminds me of something that I would have back home in Italy, like the same sort of texture, milky, and a bit lactic. Just everything you said, but with something different.
And you can taste that nettle, can't you?
Yeah.
You can taste the nettle. So the nettle's giving you a textural experience, but also is imparting flavour.
It's almost a bit lemony as well. Yeah, because it's fresh and there is that acidity. Maybe not a very acidic lemon, but something like, an Amalfi lemon, one of those sweeter ones. So there is something about
right.
it. Yeah.
And the other thing I think you get a bit of is yogurty.
Definitely.
But the older the cheese gets, the more likely you are to get some of those flavours coming through.
Feta cheese is made with a combination of sheep's milk and goat's milk, which gives it that creaminess and an extra kick compared to cow's milk cheeses. But depending on where you are in Greece, you will get a different tasting feta, from soft and buttery to hard and tangy. It's all down to the combination of the two milks and how much of them you use. We're here in the Peloponnese to find out what other secrets are behind the making of feta cheese.
Γιατί μπορεί να έχεις μια φέτα που να είναι μόνο πρόβια και μπορεί να έχεις και μια φέτα που να έχει μέχρι 30% γίδινο μεσοπρόβιο. Απαγορεύεται το αγελαδινό, απαγορεύεται, έτσι. Εμείς δουλεύουμε περίπου με 90% πρόβιο και 10% γίδινο.
Why do you use a combination of the two? Like, how does that change the taste?
Έτσι που θέλουμε να είναι παράλληλα και βουτυράτη, αλλά ταυτόχρονα να είναι και ελαφρώς πικάντικη. Μέσα θα ήταν πολύ βουτυράτο, αλλά δεν θα είχαμε αυτή την πιπεράτα που δίνει το γίδινο.
The milk that you see here in these vats has rested for a day at cool temperatures and has been pasteurized. It is now ready to be turned into cheese. Once each batch has cooled to 35 degrees Celsius, Giorgio's dad, Athanasius, adds cultures to the milk to kickstart its fermentation.
Από εδώ είναι ο πατέρας μου, είναι από το γεννημένο το 1948, είναι 73 χρονών. Η συνταγή η πρώτη ήταν της γιαγιάς μου το 1950. Μετά ο πατέρας μου μεγαλώνοντας την εξέλιξε.
After the cultures rest 20 minutes, Athanasius proceeds to add rennet. The rennet used also comes from two kinds of milk. This time it is a mix of cows and goats to add extra spice. Each batch rests for 55 minutes and is then cut into curds. The curds are cut first vertically and then horizontally to achieve perfect cubes.
Yeah, well, you just like to cut things in cube a lot.
After being cut, the curds are transferred into molds, which are in the shape of cubes, of course. While other cheeses go into molds and all their whey is pressed out, feta's molds have some holes in them to gently drain the whey but without losing it all. And we'll find out why soon. Here, each cube holds 8 kilos of curd and whey, but will eventually weigh just 6 kilos. After a 2-hour break, each cube is cut into 1 kilo blocks and salted. Athanasius is putting salt beneath and over the blocks to evenly coat the cheese. It will rest for 24 hours. You may have noticed these plastic separators. They are used to keep gently draining whey out of the feta curd. This liquid whey mixed with the salt draining is in fact going to make feta's natural brine. Once the packaging is sealed, feta will release even more liquid, adding to that brine.
So how many kilos is this?
20.
20, okay. God, great kettlebell.
Για κούμπα το λίγο.
Feta ages for 15 days at 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. The temperature and aging time contribute to the intensity of flavor. The longer it ages, the more acidity it gains.
Εμείς κάνουμε μια πολύ καλή ορίμαση εδώ, ώστε να έχουμε πιο έντονη γεύση. Άμα δεν οριμάσει το τυρί, καταρχήν θα είναι άγευστο. Οπότε δεν θα είναι υπόξινο, θα είναι σαν χορτάρι. Το πρώτο πράγμα που βλέπουμε στο τυρί, αν είναι όριμο, είναι το χρώμα της άλμης, αν είναι πολύ κίτρινο ή όχι, και το χρώμα του τυριού. Μετά βλέπουμε, πιέζοντας το τυρί χαμηλά κάτω-κάτω, πόσο εύκολα ή δύσκολα πάει κάτω και πόσο εύκολα ή δύσκολα έρχεται επάνω. Άμα είναι πιο όριμο, έρχεται πιο γρήγορα. Μετά βλέπουμε και αν τα κομμάτια μεταξύ τους αρχίζουν και αποκτούν χώρο, που σημαίνει ότι αρχίζει οριμάζει το τυρί και σφίγγει. Είναι και αυτό ένας τρόπος. Taste.
Oh yeah, of course. Nice texture.
Και είναι και ζεστό
It's
ακόμα.
crumbly, but a little bit
Είναι και ζεστό.
a bit soft.
Βουτυράτο. Ναι, είναι υπόξινο και απλά είναι και βουτυράτο ταυτόχρονα. Έτσι. Αλλά σε 3-4 μέρες θα είναι αυτή η γεύση, αλλά λίγο πιο σκληρό. Και θα είναι just.
Feta used to be aged in barrels. I've read that the barrels used to add a little bit of spice and the rennet, giving it that bitterness.
Είναι πάρα πολύ μεγάλος μύθος ότι επηρεάζει τη γεύση, την επηρεάζει. Αλλά αυτό δεν σημαίνει ότι θα έχεις καλύτερη γεύση.
After the first 15 aging days at mild temperature, feta is then stored at a cold temperature for 45 days to reach its full taste and aroma.
Μισό κιλό το κάνα.
Thank you.
Δεν έχουμε κρασί μόνο.
You can taste the goat milk there. There is that hint of spiciness. It's like the one we had before, with that extra crumbliness as well in the texture. It's a nice balance of flavor. You get like that aftertaste, that kick with it.
Από εκεί πέρα να είναι λίγο πιπεράτη, γιατί θέλουμε και λίγο το γίδινο μέσα. Οπότε έχουμε να έχει βουτυράδα, να είναι υπόξινη, να είναι πιπεράτη. Και από εκεί πέρα να είναι και σε σκληρότητα, μέτρια σε σκληρότητα. Η γιαγιά μου την έκανε αρκετά πιο σκληρή. Η ίδια γεύση, αλλά πολύ σκληρή. Ο πατέρας μου την έκανε, άλλαξε και την κάνει μέτρια σε σκληράδα, οπότε είναι και λίγο πιο βουτυράτη. Και αυτό ήταν και πια η επιτυχία. Το τρώω όλο τώρα εδώ πέρα, να ξέρεις, γιατί είναι πολύ ωραίο έτσι κι αλλιώς.
When you think of Swiss cheese, you think of holes, right? But Emmentaler isn't actually the most popular cheese in Switzerland. Gruyere is the most produced and most consumed cheese in the country. We're here to see how it's made and find out why it's the main component of a Swiss fondue. We're actually in the town of Gruyere, which is in the French-speaking region of Fribourg, near Geneva. Fribourg is one of the 5 areas, including Bern, Jura, Vaud and Neuchâtel, that make up the Gruyere AOP production zone. Gruyere has a long heritage. Records of cheesemaking go back to the 12th century in this region. Legend has it that in the year 161, the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius died after eating too much Gruyere. Today, 30,000 tons of Gruyere are produced here each year. The Maison de Gruyere is responsible for 520 tons of that. In 2018, over 15,000 tons of Gruyere were sold in Switzerland, making it the most consumed cheese in the country, ahead of mozzarella and Emmentaler. Gruyere was granted AOP protection from the EU in 2001, meaning that these areas are the protected designation of origin. But there are a few qualifications for this. It must be made using traditional know-how. It must be aged to a minimum of 5 months. And it must be made using raw milk from natural-fed cows, from dairies no more than 20 kilometres away. Milk is supplied twice a day. A vat containing 4,800 litres of unpasteurised milk is used to produce 12 wheels of Gruyere AOP at a time. 48 wheels are produced daily. The cheesemaker adds starter cultures made from whey to mature the milk. Rennet is also added to curdle the milk. This sets the milk into a junket after 40 minutes. Knives, called cheese harps, are used to cut the curd. The vat is gradually heated up to 57 degrees Celsius until the curds are the size of wheat grains. The cheesemaker must check the texture and size of these carefully. The contents of the vat are then pumped out onto moulds, and the whey is drained away. Each wheel is then pressed for 24 hours. The following day, each wheel is dipped in a concentrated salt bath for 24 hours. After, it is taken to the cellars where it is constantly turned and the rind is washed. The cheese is stored at around 15 degrees Celsius. The cheese also has to be kept on wooden shelves. A cellar like this houses around 7,000 wheels of cheese. Gruyere is aged here for 5 months, at which point it's ready to eat. For a sharper taste, it can be aged up to 16 months. I'm going to give them a try and see whether I can tell the difference between the different ages. First one I'm going to try is the 6-month age Gruyere. The rich kind of nuttiness hasn't come through as much yet. It's still quite a mild cheese at this stage. Now it's the 8-month age Gruyere. Wow. There's such a difference in flavour between the two of them. Also the texture of it, you can get slightly more grainy and a much richer flavour to this one. I know this is going to be the strongest flavour because it's the longest age. So all 3 of these go into making a fondue, which we're going to try. We couldn't come here without trying fondue moitié-moitié, also called fondue suisse. In many Swiss regions, Gruyere cheese is the most popular ingredient in fondue. Another important component for a great fondue here is the vacherin, and what it does is it gives it a consistency, so it's not just Gruyere that goes into an amazing fondue. It's so rich and so creamy. You can definitely taste a bit of punch from the more mature flavours of cheese in there. It's just the absolute real deal. That is the best fondue I've ever had. On top of fondue, you can find Gruyere in French onion soup, croque monsieur, cordon bleu, quiche, the list goes on. It's a versatile and popular cheese for cooking because it has a taste that's distinct but not overpowering. A wheel of Gruyere is between 55 and 65 centimetres in diameter and weighs between 25 and 40 kilograms. Have you noticed the writing on the side of the rind? Le Gruyere AOP is inscribed on every authentic wheel. Each wheel must have a casein mark and the number of the cheese factory. It must also have the date of production on it. You might be thinking, wait, why doesn't this Swiss cheese have holes in it? The French variety of Gruyere is required to have holes and receives IGP protection. In Switzerland, Gruyere receives AOP protection and it's a smooth texture. As Gruyere is such a popular cheese, how does the Maison de Gruyere protect itself against copycat products?
Gruyere is a well-known name, so it's a high-quality product and as like a watch, for example, you make a fake Gruyere and we find some fake Gruyere on the market and we can find who is the producer of this fake Gruyere, we attack him.
The name Gruyere is protected around the world, in Switzerland, Russia, Europe, South Africa, and the USA.
Sweet and creamy, Camembert holds a special place in the heart of cheese lovers.
Today we're in Normandy, France, and we are in the village of Bermonville. We are visiting Les Cinq Frères, which is a local farm, to see how traditional farmhouse Camembert cheese is made.
To be called Camembert, a cheese has to weigh at least 250 grams, be 10 centimeters in diameter, and have about 22% fat content. And it has to come from Normandy. This region in northern France is in fact where the cheese was born. Legend has it that it was first made in 1791 in the village of Camembert by Marie Harel, a farmer from Normandy, after a priest from Brie shared cheesemaking tips with her. Although Marie really existed, it's probable that the cheese originated a few centuries earlier, in the 12th century. But thanks to Marie and her family after her, Camembert started to be produced on a larger scale and gained popularity. Fast forward a few hundred years, the Normands still take great pride in it.
Le camembert, c'est du lait, du terroir et de l'authenticité. C'est un fromage qui est intimement lié, c'est-à-dire que le camembert, c'est vraiment le fromage normand. C'est un fromage à pâte molle où voilà, il y a une croûte fleurie tout autour et c'est vraiment l'emblème de la Normandie, c'est le camembert.
Le Cinq Frères is a family-run farm that grows wheat, rapeseed, barley and other cereals. It makes 400 wheels of camembert every day.
Notre entreprise, elle est assez ancienne. C'est une exploitation familiale et donc elle appartenait à mon grand-père, ensuite à notre père et aujourd'hui avec mes 4 frères, on est 5 garçons. C'est pour ça qu'on a appelé le camembert le Cinq Frères, c'est parce que voilà, on est une fratrie de 5 frères et qu'on travaille ensemble sur l'exploitation.
It takes 2 liters of milk to make 1 wheel of camembert. Before being transformed into cheese, the milk has to mature for a day. This allows microorganisms to flourish and to acidify the milk, so when rennet is added, the curd develops faster. Then the milk is ladled by hand 5 times every hour.
Et donc on aperçoit que le caillé peut s'égoutter tranquillement, lentement, et voilà, c'est comme ça qu'on peut rajouter du caillé après dans les moules. On ne peut pas faire les 5 fois en même temps parce qu'il n'y a pas assez de place dans les moules pour verser les 5 louches d'une seule fois. Il faut être patient, il faut attendre 1 heure entre chaque louche pour laisser le temps au caillé de bien s'égoutter.
After ladling, the cheese is salted and left to dry for 1 day.
Ce sont des fromages qui sont jeunes, qui ont 1 journée, ils ont été faits hier et donc là ils passent 1 journée dans cette salle-là pour sécher. C'est-à-dire que l'objectif c'est d'avoir une surface bien sèche, qu'il n'y ait plus de lactosérum tout autour du fromage et donc demain matin je vais les retourner. Et donc là en fait on peut voir les 5 louches. Et donc ça veut dire que c'est une fabrication authentique, artisanale.
Camembert ages for 4 to 5 weeks. This allows a fungus to grow all around the cheese and age it.
Il y a un mélange de plusieurs flores pour faire le camembert, mais principalement au niveau de la croûte extérieure, on ajoute du géotrichum et du pénicillium. Et donc au début, elle est toute blanche et plus le fromage s'affine, plus elle vieillit et après le fromage il devient un petit peu marron sur les arêtes, sur le tour et le fromage est aussi crémeux. Donc plus on avance dans le temps, plus le fromage il change un petit peu de couleur, quoi, il brunit et il est plus affiné, quoi.
Traditionally, camembert is packaged in paraffin paper and placed in a wooden box.
Pourquoi on l'emballe dans une boîte en bois? C'est pour bien que le fromage il soit formé et surtout que la forme du fromage elle reste jusqu'à la fin. Parce que plus le fromage il s'affine après, plus il est crémeux, il est un peu mou et donc s'il n'est pas maintenu dans une boîte en bois, après il coule et donc c'est pas joli, on ne peut pas vendre ça.
You may associate camembert with a strong, stinky cheese smell. It's actually because of the milk used.
C'est-à-dire que c'est du lait cru. C'est parce qu'on ne chauffe pas le lait, donc c'est toute la flore qui est dans le lait qui donne cette odeur un petit peu forte. Mais l'odeur est plus forte que le goût. C'est-à-dire qu'en goût, le fromage il est plutôt doux, il est crémeux, mais c'est lié au lait cru et au mode de fabrication. Et aussi à l'alimentation des vaches, parce que du coup, ce que les vaches mangent a une influence sur la nature du lait et donc l'évolution et le goût au final, quoi. Celui-là, il est assez jeune, il n'est pas encore complètement crémeux. Cette partie-là, elle est encore dure. Et donc, il faudrait attendre encore 2, 3 ou 4 semaines pour qu'il soit complètement crémeux.
So this is the camembert that Charles just cut for us. Let's give it a try. Oh, it's nice. It's nice. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure how you could wait 2 more weeks. It's really good. Biting into the outside part of the cheese, you start to get those like typical flavors of camembert. You get the gooiness, you get a bit of a sour aftertaste. You can taste more of the milk in here, and you can taste that it's raw milk. Maybe it's not as like creamy as you know, the one that I'm used to, that is like just the standard one I buy at the supermarket. But again, the flavors here are stronger. Like the flavors here are more robust, and actually, if you can see, there is some creaminess going on in here. Just by far the best one I've ever had, regardless of how much time it has been on the shelves.
The popularity of the soft, creamy cheese has led Camembert-style cheeses to be made all over the world. France alone makes 360 million wheels of Camembert each year, and the cheese has become a symbol of French culture. It was used to feed French soldiers during World War I and even gave its name to the pie chart, which in French is called un diagramme en camembert. More and more dairies have started to pasteurize their milk for health and safety reasons, leaving only a few farmers in France still making it the traditional way, using raw milk, which is permitted in Europe but forbidden in the US.
Les clients sont très attachés à l'origine géographique des produits, et donc c'est important de faire du camembert en Normandie. Et donc on peut faire du camembert ailleurs, mais ça n'a pas la même saveur, ça n'a pas le même goût. Et comme on ne réchauffe pas trop le lait, le camembert il a vraiment le goût de ce que les vaches mangent ici. Et donc le camembert qu'on fabrique ici à la ferme, il a un goût qu'on ne peut pas imiter. Voilà.
We're in Locorotondo, Italy, and today we're going to see how ricotta is made. Ricotta is a very versatile cheese, we all know it, that can be eaten in very different ways. And technically speaking, it's not even really a cheese, because it comes from the liquid whey when the milk is curdled. So today we're going to visit a small dairy here in the countryside to find out more about how it's made. Let's go.
Ricotta is part of a family of fresh cheeses that are normally eaten the same day. Fresh dairy products are very popular in southern Italy, where each region will make its own version of ricotta depending on the milk used and its flavor profiles. Puglia, the region we're in today, favors a soft, delicate ricotta made with liquid whey derived from cow's milk. Bigger dairies that make cheese often consider liquid whey just a leftover product and use it to feed livestock or even discard it. But for smaller, local dairies here in Italy, it is a great opportunity to optimize their resources and get something great out of them. Just like its sisters, mozzarella and burrata, ricotta is a game of time and chemistry.
La ricotta in realtà non è un formaggio né un prodotto del latte, è un sottoprodotto, nel senso che prima si lavora il latte, si recupera il siro e si recupera la ricotta.
Quindi diciamo che per produrre non si potrebbe mai produrre solamente la ricotta, perché sarebbe uno spreco alla fine di cagliata, cioè per un caseificio.
Sì, diciamo che la ricotta è un prodotto fondamentale per l'economia, nel senso la recuperi così dagli scarti, quindi per l'economia di un'azienda è molto importante.
Today, Giovanni is going to show us how he makes ricotta from 100 liters of milk. Out of this 100 liters, only 10 will turn into curds that will then make cheese. But cheese is not the star of the show for us today. In reality, as much as 90% of what's in here is liquid whey, and that's all going to be turning into ricotta.
Quindi noi oggi andremo a fare una caciotta morbida, molto umida, che tende a trattenere molta umidità, quindi recupereremo circa un 10-11%. Il resto sarà tutto il siro che andremo a recuperare per la ricotta.
Ok.
Quindi un sottoprodotto che recupereremo per la ricotta. Abbiamo portato il latte a 40 gradi, quindi un latte crudo, riscaldato, appena munto stamattina. Gli andremo solo ad aggiungere del caglio, nient'altro.
Questo sarebbe il caglio?
Questo è il caglio, sì, caglio animale di vitello.
E quindi con l'aggiunta di questo caglio tu...
Passeremo il latte dalla fase liquida alla fase solida.
Okay.
Il caglio praticamente serve a questo. Aspetteremo un 10 minuti, un quarto d'ora circa.
Quindi è molto veloce?
È un passaggio abbastanza veloce, sì.
È una tempistica, diciamo...
È una tempistica che varia in base al tipo di formaggio, esatto. in base al tipo di caglio o in base alle dosi da usare anche. Una volta cagliato il latte, nel senso che ha fatto presa, è diventato gelatinoso, non solido, andremo a fare la rottura del coagulo con il classico attrezzo, si chiama lo spino. Andremo a separare la parte solida, che rimarrà, dalla parte liquida, che sarà il siero. In base al tipo di grano che poi andremo a lasciare, dipenderà il tipo di formaggio.
E anche il tipo di attrezzo.
Il tipo di attrezzo, sì, diciamo che possiamo usare questo, ce ne sono altri, per altre tipologie di formaggio, però diciamo che questo è quello che va per la maggiore. Con questo se ne possono fare la maggior parte.
Sì, questo l'ho visto, anche in dimensioni più grandi.
Parecchio più grandi. Sì. Appena si inizia a rompere, comunque il coagulo rimane morbido, quindi bisogna essere delicati, non bisogna romperlo tanto, più di tanto, con i suoi tempi e aspettare che comunque prenda la consistenza che vogliamo, quindi dargli sempre il tempo che ha il tipo di formaggio.
Che dimensione avrà?
Visto che noi andremo a fare un formaggio morbido, quindi come fosse una noce.
Ah, questa dimensione?
Questa dimensione, però dobbiamo sempre aspettare che si andrà ad indurire, in modo da non perdere troppo siero. Quindi più è piccolo, più siero perde, più sarà asciutto il formaggio alla fine.
Va bene. E per quanto tempo lo romperai?
Il tempo dipende sempre no, più che dalla dimensione, dalla durezza che prende il chicco, quindi diciamo che entra in gioco anche il fattore del latte, quindi più sono alte le proteine all'interno del latte, più sarà duro e quindi sarà diverso il movimento.
When the curds have reached the desired texture and size, Giovanni will extract them and place them into molds, which will go on to age and become cheese. Finally free from its curdled twin, the liquid whey is ready to be turned into ricotta.
Una volta recuperato lo aggiungiamo semplicemente di sale, era una soluzione di acqua e sale. Lo porteremo a 60 gradi per aggiungere del latte, quindi comunque una piccola parte di latte c'è, e lo riporteremo fino a 85 gradi per permettere l'affioramento della ricotta.
Quindi la ricotta praticamente sarà, cosa sarà? La cagliata di quel latte che aggiungerai? Cioè come si fa a formare questa ricotta cremosa?
La ricotta è un passaggio più delicato forse, è l'affioramento del grasso che si lega con le siroproteine. Okay. Le siroproteine che non sono influenzate nel formaggio dal caglio vengono recuperate nella ricotta. Quindi sono sempre proteine del latte che si legano al grasso che andremo ad aggiungere del latte a una temperatura di 85 gradi con una piccola quantità di acido, noi ci andremo ad aggiungere del siero innesto, tende a far affiorare questa unione che si crea tra siroproteine e grasso.
Ah, va bene.
Che salirà, esatto, salirà tutta, affiorerà. Esatto. È il termine giusto.
Giovanni then starts heating up the whey to add milk and ferments to it. If we had to judge a step by how loud it is, I'd say this is definitely a crucial one. Thankfully for our ears, it was also a pretty quick one.
Ma questa che si è formata qui in superficie è panna?
È solo schiuma. La schiuma del cappuccino, cioè per intenderci.
Ma infatti, cioè, questa macchina fa esattamente lo stesso rumore di una macchinetta del caffè. Sembra di entrare in un bar, praticamente.
Magari.
E in quanto tempo raggiunge la temperatura a 85 gradi?
È già arrivato.
Ah, è già arrivato. Quindi molto rapido.
While Giovanni carefully removes all the excess foam, we can see it slowly starting to surface, the ricotta we came for today.
Una volta affiorata si può solamente raccogliere.
Ok. La raccogli direttamente così?
Cercando di romperla il meno possibile, in modo da fare in modo che trattiene quanto più umidità possibile. Quindi.
Così viene bella morbida il risultato finale. E comunque deve essere un movimento abbastanza veloce, perché vedo che comunque un po' di siero cola, cioè non riesce a trattenerlo tutto.
Il siero comunque un po' lo perderà, è normale. Però più si rompe il coagulo, diciamo, quello che si è creato, più siero tenderà a perdere. però comunque la ricotta dopo un po' tenderà a scendere giù. Una volta scesa giù non si può più raccogliere. Ma in questo mestiere ci sono tante cose dove bisogna prendere l'attimo giusto, partire dal formaggio, l'acidificazione, la filatura della mozzarella, o un sacco di cose che si possono fare solo in un determinato momento. Passato quel momento non sono più recuperabili.
Sempre stato un casaro?
Sì, cerco di approfondire sempre di più, ma sempre nello stesso settore, cioè non mi sono mai mosso da questo.
E come hai imparato?
Diciamo che ho iniziato come il lavoretto di fine scuola, d'estate, ho iniziato così a lavoricchiare. Poi è iniziata la passione, quindi non mi sono più allontanato. Diciamo che la tradizione ti insegna.
We're in San Nicandro Garganico, Italy, and today we're going to see how Caciocavallo cheese is made. Caciocavallo is one of the most popular cheeses here in southern Italy, and it's famous for its elongated shape. What we're going to see today is a special kind of Caciocavallo, the Podolico kind, which is made with the raw milk of Podolica cattle, a rare breed of cattle that is able to survive in the harshest conditions that we can find here. These conditions make their cheese one of the most expensive in Italy, sometimes even more expensive than the finest of Parmesans. Let's go find out more. The Podolica cows that make this seaside cheese scatter all over as they roam, making it hard to tell that you're actually on a farm. Meet Virginio, one of only a handful of producers making the cheese we are here to learn about. He uses a recipe that his grandparents taught him, though the most important element of this recipe is location. Here in San Nicandro Garganico, we are only 1 kilometer from the sea and 100 meters above sea level. This is an important detail, and we'll soon know why.
E qui ci troviamo quasi vicino al mare, vicino a due laghi di acqua salata, insomma famosi qui.
Qua ci troviamo tra il lago di Lesina e Varano.
Ed influisce un po' la presenza di questi laghi?
Sì, influisce perché tu hai praticamente tutti i microelementi li troviamo nel microambiente, calcio, iodio, magnesio, abbiamo tutto a disposizione, quindi non abbiamo bisogno di integrazioni alimentari.
The Podolica produce only 3 to 6 liters of milk a day, which is much less than the 30 liters an average cow might produce. Today, we're working with 50 liters. The environment in which the cows feed gives this milk a rich, earthy flavor. The whole cheese-making process takes 5 hours. Virginio heats up the milk to 40 degrees, enough to warm it up but still keep it raw, which is essential to make this type of Caciocavallo. If the milk were to become too warm, it would scorch and kill off the unique flavor that the Podolica cow's milk brings to the special cheese. He then adds rennet and fermented whey from yesterday's production, and after 20 minutes he starts cutting the curd. He aims for the size of a grain of rice. To do that, he uses this mushroom-looking tool which is called menaturo, a word that, as you might have guessed, comes from the local dialect.
Ma come mai ha questa forma a fungo?
In pratica perché agevola la rottura della cagliata.
Ah, ok. Però tutti gli altri strumenti che ho visto per tagliare altri formaggi hanno tipo delle reti, insomma.
Anche dell'attrezzatura.
Ah, ok. Quindi questo anziché, diciamo, essere a rete, a grata, è più uniforme.
Guarda, sì, è un pezzo di olivastro all'esterno e più un bastone di qualsiasi.
Quindi questo è lo strumento tradizionale per il Caciocavallo.
Rather than slowly cutting the curd, to make Caciocavallo, Virginio energetically slashes through it. This breaks it up into the small pieces he's hoping to achieve. We are used to seeing curd being extracted and then shaped into cheese right away, but here it actually rests further with some of its own warm whey, to allow for more concentrated flavor to develop. Keeping the curd nice and warm will facilitate its fermentation. While some other cheesemakers might use a steel vat for this process, here Virginio uses a maple vat to ferment the cheese. This also impacts the flavor, adding notes of acidity that tickle your tongue as you eat. Virginio tells us this takes about 1 hour, but because it's winter, we ended up waiting for 3 hours instead. The curd is ready to be stretched. Virginio takes out a bit of whey to keep as ferments for tomorrow. He then slices the curd in smaller parts, which will then be kneaded in hot water. In comparison to the stretched curd of mozzarella, this one will be harder. This is due to the waiting time as well as the size of the curd when it was cut.
Ma anche il sapore sarebbe diverso, perché Quando la pasta è dura, tu hai un formaggio stagionato più morbido. Quando la pasta è morbida, hai un formaggio stagionato più duro.
E quindi c'è più sapore nel formaggio perché è più concentrato
In quello umido
nella
sì,
pasta.
in quello umido sì, perché tu riesci a conservare i sapori.
Invece nel formaggio, un formaggio più morbido come la mozzarella viene perso un po' nel latte, nell'acqua, sì. Anche un colore più giallino rispetto alla pasta che
È l'alimentazione degli animali.
Ah, quindi non dipende da quanto tempo è stata qui, ma è proprio il colore del
questo
latte.
è solo il colore del latte, sì, sì.
Quindi il latte
Qua
non
in pratica
è...
tutti i beta-caroteni, tutti i principi nutritivi del pascolo verde li ritroviamo tutti quanti.
Quindi diciamo come regola base, se il latte è un po' più giallo vuol dire che ci sono più nutrienti.
Vai, più ricca di vitamine.
Sì, quindi l'immagine che noi abbiamo del latte bello bianco,
Sì.
in verità non è...
Scremato,
sì.
strascremato, cioè alla fine di latte ci rimane poco e niente.
Sì.
E comunque c'è un'omogenizzazione dei sapori. In pratica quando ero bambino avevo un'intolleranza al latte.
Ah, davvero? Proprio a te che fai i formaggi?
E allora praticamente dopo 1000 prove mio padre decise di darmi il latte vaccino. Quindi è da 8 giorni che bevo latte di podolica.
Ah, da 8 giorni di vita praticamente. Ah, tu quindi bevi il latte
Crudo?
Il latte crudo che abbiamo utilizzato qualche ora fa per fare questo.
Questo è il latte che consumo io.
Ah.
Forse per questo sono così legato a loro.
Eh sì, insomma ti ha salvato la vita perché letteralmente.
Virginio then adds some hot water to the curd. He will shape it into 2 cheeses, each weighing 2.5 kilos. This process will be done completely by hand, so let's get comfortable.
A posto.
He tells me this water is 100 degrees, yes, Celsius, and judging by the color of his hands and smoke around us, I don't envy him.
Sta belli caldi qua, sembra di stare tutti attorno a un camino. Oh, è lunghissima, guarda. C'è un serpentone praticamente. Perché le due teste hanno una dimensione diversa?
Perché comunque la testa è la parte più salata, quindi in realtà non si mangia.
No, quella è la parte più buona. Vabbè, de gustibus, però...
La parte più buona è il cuore.
No, io sono una grande fan delle teste dove c'è la buccia. Sono buone.
Each cheese goes through different shapes before reaching its final one. Virginio has his personal signature shape too. When Virginio is happy with the shape of the caciocavallo, he places it in cold water to set the shape and stop the fermentation. He then adds a rope around the cheese's heads to tie the pair together.
La caratteristica è che vanno in due?
Sì, la comunità del caciocavallo è che tu lo lasci assagionare senza doverlo girare e rigirare. Perché se tu hai un formaggio su un piano, tu ogni tanto sei costretto a girarlo per far asciugare tutte e due le facce omogeneamente.
È perché poi il peso di uno regge il peso dell'altro.
Certo,
sono due gemelli. Sì.
Once paired, the 2 cheeses move to bathe in brine. The time they spend here depends on weight. Every kilo needs 24 hours. These 2 new entries weigh 2.5 kilos, so they stay here for 60 hours. And when that time is over, their next destination is something unexpected.
Perché siamo fuori?
Questa è la mia prassi personale, io lo lascio per 2 ore qua ad asciugare sotto il mio albero portafortuna.
Sotto gli alberi.
Così il vento lo asciuga anche un po' esternamente e poi rimane tutta bello giallo. È un gesto scaramantico.
Sì, beh giustamente le mucche mangiano, respirano l'aria di...
Anche il caciocavallo fa lo stesso.
E anche i caciocavalli. Ecco perché sono poi appesi
Sì, sono
in
a
coppia.
cavallo del gancio.
Ah, ecco. Quindi abbiamo spiegato anche il significato.
A cavallo means over the hook, hence the name of the cheese. The tree is actually the only time the cheeses will see some sunlight, as the pair will spend the rest of their aging days in caves. The minimum aging is 6 weeks, and the maximum 2 years. Today, Virginio has prepared a 6-month-old caciocavallo for us to taste. A cheese this old is worth $40 a kilo, which translates into just over $100 a piece.
Ovviamente noi abbiamo la buccia, quella esterna, che va buttata via. Noi ci rendiamo conto che il caciocavallo è stagionato quando questa inizia a diventare dorata.
Ah sì, sì, si vede. La buccia è molto spessa e all'interno praticamente molto
Sì, perché
granuloso.
la buccia praticamente funziona come un contenitore per il caciocavallo, per il formaggio vero e proprio.
È un po' come un formaggio, un parmigiano, insomma un grano, un formaggio granuloso, grazie. Wow. Si sentono degli aromi. È un po' salato in effetti, ma è la salamoia o proprio,
No,
è proprio lo iodio e l'aria della terra? Si sente, si
Sulla
sente.
casa non è il sale da cucina.
Sì, sì, è il sale cioè sale marino, insomma. Di solito sono un po' più morbidi, un po' più dolci. C'è anche un po' piccante, no?
Sì.
Questo è anche l'effetto dell'aria salata praticamente, del luogo.
Dell'area in cui viviamo.
Sì. Buono, buono. E quindi normalmente si mangia così, c'è neanche con un pezzo di pane, proprio...
Con un po' di pane da solo. L'alimento è praticamente il formaggio che chiude il pranzo.
In the family of smelly cheeses, there are probably only a few that will really make you go,
Oh!
well, I have no doubt, for me, Stinking Bishop beats them all. Crowned the smelliest cheese in the UK, Stinking Bishop gets its distinctive smell thanks to perry, which is a pear cider used to wash the rind of the cheese. The result? A moldy exterior, a squidgy texture, and an everlasting, pungent smell.
We're in the pear orchards of Dimmock, Gloucestershire, England, at the home of Stinking Bishop. It is from the fruits of these trees that the infamous perry cider is made. But while the perry gives the cheese its distinctive smell, I'm curious, will the cheese taste as strong as it smells? We're here to find out.
There is only one farm in the world that makes this cheese, Charles Martel and Son. And just like Stinking Bishop is a semi-soft cheese, its recipe is semi-secret. We know it starts with pasteurized cow's milk that is left in a vat for 4 hours with ferments and rennet. We also know that the rennet used is a vegetable rennet. This helps coagulate the milk without interfering with the flavor of the cheese, which an animal rennet will do. The milk comes from the local Gloucester cattle. The milk from this breed is particularly suited for cheese making because during the coagulation process, its cream doesn't rise to the surface and get lost within the whey. Rather, it stays down in the milk and it will make the final cheese much richer. When the curd has reached the size of a nut, it is transferred into molds. This is the first secret step of the process. At the end of the molding, this tower of empty molds that you see behind me will be full of curd, and after a certain amount of time that is also secret, the cheeses will be moved to the maturing room.
Okay, this is the moment of truth, let's see.
Smelly?
It wow, well, it's not as bad as I thought. It doesn't smell bad, it just has a strong smell, I
Yes.
think. Yeah, that's pungent.
Lots of people describe as old smelly socks, which
Okay.
is a bit disgusting. But actually, when you eat the cheese, it's really nice.
Yeah?
And you can't taste the smell. You can just taste the cheese, which is nice and smooth.
It fills up your nostrils and just stays there.
With that smell still very much up in my nostrils, Justina talks me through the most important step of the making of Stinking Bishop, washing it in perry. This is done when the cheese is 1 day old. Old enough to hold its shape, but young enough to absorb the flavors of the perry.
How often do you do this? How often do you wash it in perry?
Only once.
Only once?
Only once,
Oh,
yes.
and that's enough just to,
That's
you know, make everything that the
Yes.
cheese is. All right.
Well, it's alcohol.
Yeah.
And also you can smell the aroma of the perry, so you don't want to have this too strong at the same time.
And this washing, is there a method to it, or is just, you know, you caressing the cheese
Yes.
and enjoying the work? You know,
putting my love to
yesterday's
it.
work.
Yes.
The molds around the cheese are made of beechwood. You may ask, why? We don't know. That's another secret that the makers wouldn't share. My guess is that this helps the cheese keep its shape Of course, without being too rigid and thus allowing the cheese to retain some moisture. Like other semi-soft cheeses, and this we know for sure, Stinking Bishop wheels age for 2 to 3 weeks and they are turned regularly to ensure both sides mature equally.
So this is the finished cheese that still smells even though it's
Yes, the
it's
cheese always
packaged.
smells, yes. So this is the ready cheese.
Oh wow. Oh, that's quite. Oh, it's beautiful actually, no?
Yes,
It's it looks like one of those like eyeshadow palettes or something. But it has nice shades of yellow and red.
Yellow, red,
yeah.
yes, a bit of orange.
Yeah, it's kind
pink.
of sparkly, no?
Yes.
So all this is because of the washing in Perry plus your secrets, you know?
Yes, yes.
And I mean, is it a coincidence that the Perry itself, it's kind of reddish?
Yeah, it's probably coming a bit from the Perry itself.
So what's the deal with this Perry? Well, around Gloucestershire there are over 100 varieties of Perry pears, which are smaller than your average pear. I know, these are blossoms, but pears were not in season when we visited. Anyway, turning them into Perry is quite a common thing here. The pear the Stinking Bishop baits in is called Stinking Bishop. Unlike what you might think, this pear doesn't stink.
Most Perry pears are little hard things like that. You know, if you threw somebody and hit them, it hurt because they're so heavy and dense, little tiny things. But the Stinking Bishop pear is more pear-shaped and more juicy. It makes a good early Perry because it's got high sugar. It ferments very quickly, and so it's got a reputation of being a very strong pear.
All right.
Named after Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop was rather an unsavoury character, and so he earned the name Stinking Bishop.
All right. So that has nothing to do with actual bishops.
No.
Yeah.
But bishops love it. Lots of bishops give each other presents of Stinking Bishop because
It comes back. Yeah.
they think it's funny, and it is. You know.
Jokes, secrets and smell aside, the story of Stinking Bishop is not really about making a cheese that will make headlines. Rather, it is about making something that could save its very source, the milk from Gloucester cattle, which risk disappearing.
Notice she got a black head and black legs, but her body's brown. That's
Okay.
a mark of the breed, and they've got this white stripe and a white tail.
Oh, okay. So all Gloucester cows have a white tail.
White tail, yeah,
Oh.
with a white streak and a white belly. Well, when I started here 50 years ago, there were 68 left in the world.
In the world.
And I thought, gosh, you know, they can't be let to become extinct. How can I help them? I managed to get hold of 3, which I milked by hand. And I thought, I know, they're originally a cheese-making breed. We'll make cheese. It was my way of helping the breed survive. Not just by breeding them, but by using them. And that's the way they'll survive, if we use them.
Oh, thank you. So do you eat the rind?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that's where the most intense part of the flavour is.
Oh, all right. So they just have. Oh,
A bit cold.
I
That's
love
all right.
it. It's really nice.
Flavour's gone in, isn't it?
Yeah, no smell at all.
No?
No, I mean.
Not supposed to say that.
No. You know, like when you
It's
said
not
you can't taste the smell because the smell can put you off. But this taste, I really love it. I don't know. It reminds me of some cheese I used to eat when I was a child. It's just the texture in your mouth. A bit creamy, but not too runny, so not too messy.
The flavour goes in from the rind, obviously, because on the rind is the culture, which is where you get the flavour.
Yeah.
The building where we're tasting the cheese is a distillery, and yes, you guessed it, this is where Perry is made. Charles tells me that his distillery is 400 years old. He even showed me some property documents from 1810.
Built in 1650, so it's the oldest original distilling house still working in the British Isles.
Oh,
Yes.
is it?
We know of no other older.
The pear cider, or perry, that is used to wash the rind of the cheese is later turned into the sweet pear spirit called Poirot, which is made out of perry and fresh pear juice.
Cheers.
Can you say it in Italian? Cheers.
Salute.
Salute.
Sweet.
It's sweet, But not sugar sweet, that's
No,
pear
yeah.
sweet.
We're in Monopoli, Italy, a beautiful coastal town in the region of Puglia, which is the region where burrata cheese is from. Burrata is one of those foods that has a very short shelf life. It has to be eaten fresh the same day. So trying a burrata here in Puglia is truly a culinary experience. And trust me, I'm from around here, but I live abroad and I've tried countless times to bring them with me in my suitcases, and they've never been as good as the ones that I've tried here. So today we're going to do exactly that. We're going to visit a local dairy and get our own burrata experience. Let's go!
In Italy, we met with Vincenzo Titrani, son, grandson and great-grandson of cheesemakers and owner of Mozzabella. His dairy produces about 500 kilos of fresh cheese every day. Vincenzo and his team start the day way before the sun is up. At 4 a.m., the milk has been acidified and it is ready to be split into curds. It now rests in this vat at 35 degrees with a whey starter and rennet.
Noi usiamo solo il metodo, un vecchio metodo, che è il siero innesto, invece di usare additivi chimici tipo acido citrico, acido lattico e quant'altro. Noi usiamo il siero del giorno prima per poterlo acidificare il latte il giorno dopo, perché per la burrata il latte va acidificato, altrimenti non fila.
Che strumento utilizzi?
Questo è uno strumento apposito fatto in acciaio per poter tagliare la cagliata, si chiama cestino. Poi ognuno ha il suo nome, in base alle regioni ha il suo nome.
Quindi
Da
qui
noi
si
il
chiama
cestino.
così. È meglio tagliare la cagliata così piuttosto che utilizzare, non so...
La chitarra, dipende dai formaggi va utilizzata la chitarra, dei formaggi va usato il cestino, ci sono diverse tipologie di taglio.
Ah, ma quindi prima usi la parte, diciamo, più piccola?
Sì, questo è il primo taglio, questo serve a far rinforzare la proteina del latte, in modo che nel secondo taglio non rilascia latte ma è già bello forte.
Quindi questo lo utilizzerai domani?
Questo siero, parte di questo siero lo utilizzo domani. Così diamo un secondo taglio, continuiamo a rinforzare sempre il reticolo della proteina, molto lentamente.
Ma si deve proprio
allora, in base al
ecco,
la grandezza del chicco va in base al tipo di formaggi. Se facciamo dei formaggi stagionati deve essere come un chicco di riso. Se facciamo dei formaggi molli, allora lo possiamo fare quanto una noce oppure quanto un fagiolo, dipende dai formaggi.
Per la burrata invece,
per la burrata va alla misura del fagiolo.
Quindi ci siamo quasi.
Quasi, sì. Il taglio della cagliata è importante al 50% sulla riuscita del formaggio, quindi ha un buon valore.
Esatto, sì. Ma questi non sono i pezzettini che ritroviamo là nella burrata?
No, no. Questo è per creare l'involucro della burrata. È la parte interna, però mischiata con la panna, che poi facciamo nel secondo momento. Diciamo che per fare la burrata non è solo il taglio.
Our cheese curds have reached their desired bean size. They will now have to rest in the whey for 1.5 hours. Vincenzo uses this time to take out part of the liquid whey, adding milk to it and transform it into ricotta.
Quanto manca adesso?
Adesso vediamo, facciamo la prova e vediamo quanto manca.
Perché è passata una mezz'oretta.
Facciamo prova a filatura.
Quindi questa è acqua calda?
Acqua calda a 90 gradi. Abbiamo bisogno ancora di 3/4 d'ora.
Da cosa te ne accorgi?
Vedi, dal tipo di filatura, perché rompe ancora.
Ah, invece non
deve
dovrebbe
filare
rompersi.
senza rompersi.
While the curd is still resting in its whey to reach the perfect stretchability, a part of it is taken out to make the inside of the burrata. These are called sfilaccetti and are little shreds of frayed, stretched curd which will be salted and mixed with cream to make stracciatella. Vincenzo uses 90-degree water to stretch the curd.
Ma quindi se la lavorazione comunque è la stessa, perché questa è la stessa cagliata,
Sì.
come mai poi nella burrata troviamo la parte esterna e la parte interna diverse?
No, la lavorazione è uguale, perché la lavorazione per farlo della stracciatella è la lavorazione della mozzarella, è solo l'aggiunta di panna. Per comodità si fanno degli sfilaccetti lunghi dove è più facile sfilacciare.
Ah, quindi la parte interna della burrata, gli
E mozzarella.
sfilaccetti. Oh, guarda. Si inizia già a filare adesso. Questo attrezzo in legno, come si chiama?
Si chiama stecca. Da noi si chiama stecca.
Ed è fatto apposta proprio per fare la
Sì, è di
la
legno di
filatura.
faggio, sì.
Quanto tempo ci vuole a filarla?
Allora, dipende. Questa che è un po' più acerba per poter fare gli sfilaccetti, un po' di più. Quando faremo la burrata, per fare l'involucro,
Perché più tempo passa nel siero,
E più certo, più siamo
più è
morbidissimi.
facile poi maneggiarla. E qui dentro c'è acqua calda, però
Sì.
adesso la stai mettendo nel ghiaccio.
Nell'acqua fredda,
Acqua
per
fredda.
raffreddarla, sì.
Perché altrimenti continua la filatura.
No, altrimenti
e si-
non si può sfilacciare per fare la stracciatella se non è ben fredda.
Ah sì, deve
Sì,
essere fredda?
sì.
Però poi quando va inserita nella burrata invece
La burrata è
sarà
calda, sì,
Ah
certo.
ok, quindi c'è un contrasto di caldo
Sì.
e freddo. E con l'acqua...
Giochiamo con le temperature,
Sì.
molto qua.
Infatti qua fa caldissimo. Se potessi mi ci butterei io dentro questa qua fredda.
Each piece of curd is then frayed one by one. And here we have our sfilaccetti.
Questa cosa non si potrebbe mai fare a macchina.
A macchina si può fare, hanno inventato la macchina.
Veramente?
Sì, solo che non ha lo stesso effetto perché viene un po' sbriciolata. Invece la vera
Vabbè,
burrata
sì, certo.
deve essere sfilacciata. Purtroppo in questo mestiere il tempo è un ingrediente.
Sì.
Anche l'attesa della cagliata è un ingrediente quello, perché quell'attesa
certo, sì.
non fa altro che rinforzare la cagliata, puoi mettere un po' di sale in più, ha un sapore diverso. È come il pane con lievito madre
Sì,
e
esatto.
il pane con lievito di birra. E quello fa in un attimo, quello invece ha bisogno di 2 giorni magari.
È
per
vero, è
poter
vero.
lievitare.
Quindi
È
lo
uguale,
stesso
la stessa
concetto
procedura.
lo applichi anche
Sì.
ai formaggi freschi, la mozzarella, la burrata, eccetera. Ma quindi questo sarebbe il ripieno di tutte le burrate
Sì.
della giornata. Quindi comunque...
O così oppure affumicata.
Cioè proprio così la stracciatella
Stracciatella affumicata.
Ah,
la
stracciatella
burrata-
affumicata
sì.
esiste. Non l'ho mai mangiata così, affumicata.
Buona affumicata.
Now that we have our inside, it's finally time to take care of the casing of the burrata.
Ma sembra già più morbida effettivamente.
morbida.
Ma invece
Più-
tu che stai
è più-
sollevando la stecca come la senti? La senti più pesante?
No,
o-
no, è chiaro, si sente molto la differenza.
Sì?
Ma già dal livello di lucentezza si
Ah
vede.
sì, è vero. Non perché adesso è un po' più tardi, quindi c'è
No,
la
no, 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 a livello
fotoggiorno,
di
si vede di
lucentezza.
più.
Questa per la burrata che devi avere appena diciamo, la buccia un po' più rinforzata, la facciamo così. La mozzarella devi ancora scendere ancora un po' di
Ancora
pH.
di più.
Sì.
Quindi per la mozzarella
Deve stare
bisogna
ancora un po'.
aspettare ancora di più.
When the casing is ready, all it takes is a swift movement to add in the stracciatella prepared previously. This is the first burrata of the day at Vincenzo's Dairy.
Adesso dalla rimanenza delle burratine ti faccio vedere da dove viene il nostro marchio di fabbrica.
Che cosa stai facendo adesso? Una
Adesso
mozzarella?
ti faccio vedere.
Vediamo un po'. Uno spirale.
È una rosa.
Bellissima.
Te la dono.
Mi fai un mazzo magari. Questo mazzo di rose mi piacerebbe riceverlo, più dei fiori. È una burrata a forma di rosa, ci avete
Si può
pensato?
fare, come no? Certo.
Sì.
Lo possiamo fare ovunque.
Come mai la rosa?
Perché mi veniva bene questo tipo di testa di scamorza e da lì è partito il mio marchio, che è unica, non la fa nessuno.
Quindi questa è stata
Almeno
un'idea tua.
finora.
Questi sono 200 grammi.
Anche 300.
Anche 300. Vabbè, non siamo timidi. Da quanti anni la fai?
Da piccolo. Che faccio questo mestiere sono quasi 35 anni. È una cosa che viene tramandata di padre in figlio da 3 generazioni. Il primo casaro della mia famiglia era nato nel 1860, qualcosa del genere.
Questa è una bolata fresca?
E questa è appena fatta, l'abbiamo fatta ora.
Wow, guarda questa panna, incredibile. C'è un sacco di stracciatella dentro. Sì. Sono abituata alle burrate che si trovano all'estero, che sono proprio tutta panna.
No, allora, quella è la
terribile.
differenza che ti dicevo della macchina.
Sì.
Quando viene tritata a macchina la stracciatella diventa come una cremina. Invece
sì.
fatta a mano e questa è la vera stracciatella.
Wow, fantastica. Questa non si può assaggiare,
certo,
no?
assaggia.
Questa è la mia colazione. Sai, quando sono andata in Spagna mi hanno fatto fare colazione con il prosciutto, prosciutto e olio. E giustamente qua in Puglia, caffè burrata.
Burrata.
Incredibile.
È come un cappuccino.
Sì, il latte c'è. Beh, alla salute.
Buon appetito.
Andato via. Buonissima. It's so creamy, it's incredible. You don't feel that there is like the small little pieces and the outside part which is harder. It melts in your mouth.
Non ha un sapore piatto come se fatta con l'acido citrico, ma ha un sapore un po' più acidulo. Insomma, a livello di sapidità è superiore. Poi noi abbiamo latte dei pascoli, non abbiamo latte delle mucche chiuse nelle stalle. Abbiamo meno resa, meno proteine, più grassi, un valore di colorante un po' superiore, però la sapidità è irraggiungibile.
Cheddar cheese is named after a small village in the West Country in England. We're here to watch the traditional method of making it and find out why cheesemakers restarted the centuries-old tradition of storing it in caves. The Cheddar Gorge Cheese Company is the only dairy in this village, so we're about to see the real deal. About 333,000 tonnes of cheddar are produced in the UK per year. To get the official Protected Designation of Origin label, West Country Farmhouse Cheddar, the cheese has to be made in one of the 4 counties: Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, Dorset. The cheese must be made from milk from grazing herds no more than 30 miles from the farm. It has to be made from a traditional recipe. The curds need to be turned by hand, and it must be aged to a minimum of 9 months. The earliest record of cheddar anywhere is at Cheddar in Somerset in 1170. The land around this village has been at the heart of English cheese making since the 15th century. Today, as many cheddar producers have upscaled and required more land, there is only one traditional cheesemaker left in the village. The Cheddar Gorge Cheese Company produces 60 tonnes of cheese each year.
But certainly down here you have the Somerset Levels and then you have the top of the Cheddar Gorge, and each year you would get a lot of water coming down from the gorge, bringing a lot of silt, which really made the pastures verdant and very, very nutritious.
In the morning, 2,000 litres of milk is delivered from a farm 4 miles away. It takes around 10 litres of milk to make 1 kilogram of cheddar. The milk is agitated, which mixes the fat evenly through the milk. Some farmhouse producers use pasteurised milk, but here it's raw milk.
We use it unpasteurised. We need to know that the quality of the milk and the safety is fine. The farm that we get it from has Friesian, Holstein Friesians, British Friesians.
A vegetarian replacement for rennet is then added, which sets the milk into a junket. This is cut to form curds and whey. The curds and whey are heated to about 40 degrees Celsius to make the curds solid. This influences the moisture level in the finished product. Cheeses like Gorgonzola and Mozzarella have a lot of moisture in them, so they go off very quickly, whereas Parmesan has little moisture, so lasts for a long time. Cheddar is somewhere in the middle, around 40%. The starter cultures develop and multiply. The whey is drained away. Next, the all-important cheddaring process, where the curds, now having the texture of chicken breasts, are turned and cut.
What cheddaring does is it squeezes the curd and forces more whey out of it. And gradually it'll get drier and drier and the texture changes very quickly.
The curd is salted by hand to preserve it, and milled into small chips. It's pressed into a 25 kilogram mould and left overnight. In the morning, it's dipped in hot water to smooth the edge of the cheese and remove the imprint of the cloth. It's then treated with a vegetarian-based substance. The use of cheesecloth is a vital way of allowing the cheese to gradually dry and develop a rind. The only thing that identifies it is a tag that states the date of production and the weight of the cheese. The mellow, mature and vintage cheddars are all stored on site, where they are turned, and the free mould is vacuumed away. The cave mature variety is carried into the famous Goffs Cave in the Mendip Hills. The constant temperature and humidity, nearly 98%, provide perfect conditions in which to mature cloth-bound cheese. The moisture content is a critical component, and it ensures the cultures and enzymes move on more quickly, producing a more complex flavour. It takes on the natural yeast and mould from the atmosphere in the cave, leading to an earthy flavour. The cheese's strength is defined by the length of the aging. For mellow cheddar, it's 4 to 6 months, mature 10 to 12 months, and vintage 20 to 24 months. Cave matured should have less of a bite at 12 months old. We tried some out to see if there's a taste difference between the maturations. The first one I'm going to have a little bite of is the Cave matured cheddar. It's really creamy. It almost has the consistency of quite a medium mild cheddar. You can tell the difference of the rinds here. So I've got the Cave aged one, which has sort of like that really damp, quite dark colour on the rind of it. And then I've got the vintage one, which is just a little bit lighter. Okay, now let's try some of this. Wow, the flavour of that is incredible. It has such a kick to it and such a bite. Immediately when you cut into vintage cheddar, you want there to be almost a flakiness to it, and that's exactly what this has got. The company is the first one in recent memory to reintroduce cheddar cheese back into a natural cave environment to mature. The PDO label was set up to protect the industry from non-genuine products. So why did the Cheddar Gorge Cheese Company opt out of it?
Some years ago we had PDO status for our cheese, but we deliberately opted out of it. So with a PDO you can make it from pasteurised milk. We make all ours from unpasteurised. With a PDO you can mature it in plastic. We mature ours in cloth, and we are still doing the things that would enable us to qualify for PDO. What we've just done is go on a little bit further, quite a lot further.
São Jorge cheese is one of Portugal's best kept secrets. Made in a remote volcanic island under constant humidity This cheese is packed with moisture, hints of spiciness, and a grassy scent. The art of cheesemaking arrived here on the island of São Jorge over 500 years ago, and it has become an important part of its identity. Imagine there are over 10,000 cows on the island, which is more than double the size of the human population. Cows here even dictate the start of their day for their keepers. São Jorge is a tiny island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It is also home to one of the richest and most elaborate cheeses on Earth, São Jorge cheese. The volcanic geology of this island means that its soil is rich and fertile. The result is abundant vegetation that basically never dies, and cows that are able to graze freely 365 days a year. These conditions make São Jorge cheese incredibly rich in flavor. Every bite reminds of the very grass where everything started.
Há 2 vacas para cada açoriano. Elas só comem mesmo erva da pastagem, sem mais nada. Não são estabuladas nem nada, estão sempre ao ar livre. Por isso é que chamam as vacas açorianas as vacas felizes.
João is one of the keepers here in São Jorge. He runs one of the only 4 dairies on the island, the smallest of them all, and the one that sticks to the way this cheese has been made for decades. His 40 cows give him around 400 liters of milk per day, 200 at dawn and 200 at sunset. He will combine them to make cheese. When milk arrives at the dairy, it's João's mom, Graça, and his dad, Manuel, who take the lead. They devote the whole cheese-making process to preserving the flavors of the island in the cheese by not killing the native cultures that are present in the milk. To do that, there are 2 crucial steps. The first thing is to keep the milk raw and not pasteurize it. The second is to use whey from the day before to ferment the milk, instead of adding other fermenting agents. This way, the whey is imparting even more flavor to the milk without interfering with its natural composition. As this is a more gentle way to acidify the milk, it takes 4 hours to split the milk into curds, 1 hour of rest and 3 hours of cutting. This is more than double the time other cheeses take.
Why is it this long? Is it like a recipe that is specific to São Jorge?
Sim, a receita é mesmo assim, são 4 horas. Pode até demorar mais das 4 horas, menos é mau sinal, é sinal que alguma coisa correu mal. Something went wrong.
How did the recipe come to you?
Aprendemos esta receita com várias pessoas que faziam queijo há cerca de 50 anos atrás. Alguns que faziam queijo em casa e outros que faziam queijo mesmo nas fábricas. Foi com as ideias de várias pessoas é que conseguimos chegar a esta receita.
And then your family has perfected it?
Yes.
Okay.
With the experience.
At the 4-hour mark, the cheese is salted and transferred into molds. It will stay in the molds for 48 hours, with just a short break after 1 day to quickly turn it. São Jorge then matures from 3 to 12 months. Unlike other cheeses that spend their aging days in temperature-controlled rooms, São Jorge rests at room temperature. Why? São Jorge Island is a very humid place, subject to constant fog, like really thick fog. As it ages, the humidity packs the cheese with moisture and turns it from sweet and mild to tangy and peppery.
O tempo também influencia muito o queijo, principalmente no inverno, o queijo é melhor do que no verão. O calor é um bocado inimigo do queijo.
Okay.
Daí que também a maioria das fábricas são na parte alta da ilha, porque é a parte mais fresca.
That's true, actually. We drove around and we saw all the cheese making at the top.
Fica mais macio, fica melhor, é sempre melhor, com umidade do queijo é sempre melhor do que no verão. Este queijo tem mais ou menos 2 meses. 2 meses e tal, 2 e meio talvez.
And it's ready to be tasted.
Está pronto a vender, sim.
And what is this? Is this like the moisture of the cheese?
Yes.
That is inside. Okay. Just from here you can see that it's pretty wet inside.
E ainda há outro pormenor interessante aqui, que é estes pontinhos vermelhos, castanhos, que a oxidação da gordura, a secagem da gordura, faz uma coisa que parece ferrugem, que nós chamamos mesmo a ferrugem do queijo. E é uma das características que é devido a curar à temperatura ambiente.
Can we try?
Yes. It's a bit spicy, like São Jorge cheese. Este queijo cura mais rapidamente que o grande, que das outras cooperativas tem à volta de 10 kg. E este, como tem 3,5 kg, seca mais rápido.
And it's nice and soft, but without being chewy. You can feel the humidity, it's still
Thank you.
there.
On an island where there are so few people and the only ones to compete for space are cows and hydrangeas, you might expect that Joao's cheese is accessible to all the human population here. But this is not the case. There are bigger, more commercial cheese factories on the island that are making a less traditional version of São Jorge cheese.
Isto foi sonho antigo de família, de meu pai, que ele foi criado, via o seu pai a trabalhar a dirigir a cooperativa, que ele era dirigente, era diretor. E depois sempre tivemos vacas, toda a vida tivemos vacas, eu fui criado também nisto e gosto muito disto porque foi aquilo que é a tradição da ilha e é muito bom continuar as tradições.
Red Leicester is a raw milk, nutty, sweet cheese with a citrus finish. But no doubt what makes it stand out is its bright orangey red color. The cheese is actually deliberately turned this vibrant hue with a natural coloring called annatto. It doesn't contribute to the flavor of the cheese, so why is it added?
The story goes that Stilton and its blue veins were so popular that other cheeses, including Red Leicester, were having a hard time standing out. So cheesemakers thought, what can we do to make it more popular? Let's just turn it red, and it worked. Red Leicester is one of the most popular cheeses now in the UK. So what is annatto specifically? Is it a colorant, but is it not? It's natural, right?
It's a natural colourant from a South American plant, and it's been used since the early 1800s.
Oh.
And farmers' wives would have used marigold flower colouring before that, or carotene. Yeah. It's a very deep colour, and it sticks to the fat protein, to the curd, to the fat protein matrix as it goes through the process. So as the whey goes out, it doesn't have much colour, but the curd does.
Does it stain?
Yeah, it does, yeah. And I normally manage to spill it everywhere, so they call me Annatto Dave.
Oh, it's fresh. Okay, well, no need to do nail polish. You can just dip your hands in annatto.
Do you want to pour it in? There we are. You got it?
Okay, what do I do?
Just pour. It doesn't make a pattern, write your name.
It's like a futuristic sort of painting or something like that.
It's a monster.
Yeah, it's like a tie-dye shirt.
Right, I'm going to switch the paddles on and then it'll make an even more wonderful pattern then.
Let's see.
When the milk has curdled, Izzy and Craig here are in charge of cutting the curds until they reach the size of a pea. The curds still look a bit white, as the annatto hasn't fully stuck to them yet and is still swimming in the whey. 1 hour later, the whey is drained to reveal some very yellow curds. They are cut and cut and cut into blocks, with the color getting brighter and brighter each time.
Oh my god, it's so yellow. It's like hurting my eyes a little bit.
You need sunglasses on.
Right, because you're like so close to it, and you know when you stare at the sun for a bit too long.
It needs to stand out.
Yeah.
The curds are then milled and salted. David uses this fork to evenly distribute the salt.
That piece is a garden fork.
Okay.
And we had somebody put a stainless steel scale on it. Could you take a little lump?
This one. Yeah, it's quite nice.
Just tastes salty now, doesn't it? Salty.
Yeah, just tastes salty.
And squeaky.
Salty and squeaky. Yeah, I know. Our American friends will know about this.
Each cheese is then molded and pressed into what will be a 10-kilo wheel. When the cheese is 2 days old, it is cloth-bound with lard, a traditional method that had been abandoned until very recently. A muslin cloth is dipped in a bain-marie of hot lard and then wrapped around the cheese. Lard does not add to the flavor of the cheese, but creates a seal around it, preventing it from drying out and preserving its moisture and citrus finish. It also protects the cheese from molds, which eat the lard instead of the cheese itself, keeping it humid.
mould lives on the lard, and that slowly eats the lard away, and then that starts to, and then the cheese can dry as it matures.
There's a lot of lard.
Just roll it out.
Yeah. So, that's not really. There's a bit of lard dripping. Is okay.
So you pull that down. Yeah, perfect. Grab one of the edges.
Okay. This edge. Yep.
And you'll be able to grab your hand underneath and flip it.
Whoa, because all this lard is very slippery. Okay, and then just
flip it down.
Woo.
There we go.
Perfect.
Red Leicester ages in a humid room from 6 months up to 14 months. Here you can see the mold building up and starting to do what David wants it to do, eat away the lard and leave the cheese intact. In fact, despite its moldy appearance, the cheese will have a nutty, sweet taste with a citrus finish. The lard stays on the cheese and is only removed when it is ready to be sold. Larding, as well as using raw milk to make Red Leicester, were two traditions that had been lost. Like other cheeses in the UK, Red Leicester suffered the rationing of World War II, and farms either stopped making it or abandoned traditional methods. It was David who brought this traditional recipe back after over 50 years.
Those colours on there are amazing.
It's quite a contrast with the orange. Yeah, you cannot do this job if you don't like cheese. Yeah, I like that. It is a bit crumbly, but it still holds its shape.
Yeah, but it's kind of meaty. We're looking for a meaty texture.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I really like this combination of textures. Actually, it has a nice sharp flavour.
Yeah, that's quite citrusy. That. So when you break a piece of Red Leicester, it should just snap. There's little white specks, which are basically tiny little pockets of air. So
Like eyes in the cheese.
Yeah.
That's what cheesemakers told me once.
Eyes in the cheese.
Yeah.